Kunan is a young, noble boy who lives in a grand mansion and spends his days feeling completely isolated. Everyone pities him because he cannot see. He bears the hero's scar, which means he was born blind as a side effect of his ancestors' legendary battle against the demon lord. His father and mother try to make him feel proud of this heritage, but Kunan just feels confused. He does not understand what colors or shapes are and feels trapped in his own dark world. A maid named Iko takes care of him every day. She holds his hand and guides him around the large estate because he cannot walk anywhere on his own. Kunan hates studying and complains heavily about learning magic. Iko tells him that he has a water crest and should really use his natural talent. Kunan argues back and points out that magic will not help him walk around without someone holding his hand anyway. Soon, his father Lord Gurion hires a special tutor for him. A blue-haired woman named Jene arrives at the mansion and introduces herself as his new magic teacher. Jene immediately starts the first lesson in the large library. She instructs Kunan to use his wand and cast a basic water spell. Kunan concentrates and successfully creates a small floating ball of water. Jene praises his quick learning and encourages him. Kunan asks her to describe the water ball since he cannot see it. Jene thinks for a second and compares its size and shape to an eyeball. This simple comparison completely changes Kunan's entire life. He suddenly realizes the unbelievable potential of his magic. If he can create a water ball shaped like an eye, he might be able to craft actual functioning eyeballs for himself. He boldly declares his new goal to Jene and promises to make his own eyes using magic no matter what it takes. Jene is totally shocked by his crazy ambition. This new dream fills Kunan with endless energy and he completely changes his attitude toward life. He starts paying attention to everything around him and wants to experience the world. During breakfast, he eagerly asks Iko about the food he eats. He takes a bite of his sandwich and asks about the crunchy green stuff inside. Iko tells him that it is lettuce. Kunan tastes the sauce and learns about mustard. He even mistakes a plum for an apple, so Iko happily corrects him. She feels thrilled to cook for him now that he actually cares about his meals. Kunan admits that his senses are overwhelmed by all the new smells and tastes. Iko playfully tests him by holding a grape near his face and asking him to guess the fruit. Kunan enjoys this new game and wants to learn even more. Later, Kunan sits in the library and asks Iko to read him a book. He specifically requests the history of the Holy Knight Histar Hulia. Iko worries that the story might upset him, but Kunan insists he wants to learn everything. Iko reads the legend of the great hero who defeated the demon lord but lost an arm and a leg in the process. She explains how the hero's descendants sometimes inherit these missing body parts as the hero's scar. Kunan listens closely and decides that his blindness is just a part of him that he can overcome. He focuses completely on his magic training and goes out to the garden to practice his spells. He tries to multiply his water balls to increase his control. He swings his wand and successfully creates 4 floating water slimes at once. Iko cheers for him from the sidelines and praises his shapes. Kunan pushes himself way too hard and tries to cast even more magic. Suddenly, his energy runs out and he collapses face first into the dirt. Iko panics and rushes to his side to help him up. Later, Kunan rests on a couch and recovers from his exhaustion. He realizes his body is too weak to handle his ambitions. He tells Iko he needs more stamina and knowledge to perform advanced magic. Iko suggests he eat more food to grow bigger, but Kunan rejects this idea because sudden overeating would just make him sick. He decides to start physical training instead. He asks Iko to find him a sword instructor. Iko happily agrees and runs off to ask his father for permission. She also uses the opportunity to beg Kunan for a raise. Kunan smiles and ignores her greedy request while thanking her for always supporting him. Soon, Kunan begins his physical conditioning in the garden. He spends his days swinging a wooden practice sword under the hot sun. His father hires an elderly master named Uro to teach him proper form. Uro instructs him to swing using his shoulders, elbows, and wrists in order. Kunan works hard and sweats through his clothes. He refuses to take breaks because he wants to get stronger as fast as possible. One day, Jene returns to the mansion for their next magic lesson. She greets Kunan and asks if he wants to take a break from his sword swings. Kunan declines and says he is ready to practice magic right now. Jene asks him to review the basic water spell from their last session. Kunan instantly summons several massive water bubbles that float perfectly in the air around him. Jene completely loses her mind. She cannot believe a 7-year-old child mastered this level of magic entirely on his own. She instantly realizes Kunan is a terrifying genius. Meanwhile, Princess Mirika prepares to visit the mansion. She is Kunan's arranged fiancée and she absolutely hates the idea of visiting him. She complains to her maid about the trip because Kunan is always gloomy and depressing. She knows the marriage is her royal duty since Kunon bears the hero's scar, but Mirika still dreads spending time with him. She remembers their past playdates in the forest where Kunon would just stand around sadly and refuse to play. He always complained about needing constant help to walk around. Mirika hated looking at his sad face and felt trapped by the arranged marriage. Her royal carriage arrives at the Gurian estate and she steps out expecting another miserable visit. Instead, Kunon stands in the courtyard and greets her with a massive smile. He immediately calls her cute and acts full of life. Mirika is completely stunned by his new personality. Iko stands nearby and jokes about being a creepy older man to lighten the mood. Mirika ignores the joke and asks Kunon why he is acting so strange. Kunon proudly announces that he fell in love with magic. He raises his wand and casts his water spell right in front of her. A massive water bubble forms in the air and Iko quickly pops it with a stick. The water droplets catch the sunlight and create a stunning rainbow over the garden. Mirika looks up at the sky in absolute awe and calls his magic beautiful. Kunon apologizes for making her tread lightly around him in the past. He asks Mirika to listen to his new stories because he does a lot of fun things now. Mirika happily agrees to hang out with him. Kunon reaches out and offers her his hand. They spend the entire afternoon running through the garden and playing together. Mirika eventually heads back home in her royal carriage. She blushes and smiles the whole ride back. She realizes she actually had fun and looks forward to their next meeting. After Mirika leaves, Kunon talks to Iko. He realizes he never offered his hand to a girl before. Iko praises him and calls him a true gentleman. Kunon decides he wants to become a proper gentleman for Mirika. He asks Iko to teach him noble manners and how to act around a princess. Iko excitedly agrees and promises to teach him how to be funny and charming. Kunon spends hours sitting at a desk while Iko lectures him. He quickly regrets his decision and groans in boredom. At the same time, Genie struggles to figure out her lesson plan. She sits in the dark library surrounded by magic books and realizes she has nothing left to teach Kunon. He already perfected all the elementary spells, so she panics because she wants to keep her high-paying job. She knows advanced magic is too dangerous for a kid. She gets frustrated and throws her pen in the air before catching it and making a new plan. The next day, Genie meets Kunon in the garden. She praises his skills and introduces a new concept called magical alterations. She explains that basic spells only create regular water, but advanced sorcerers can change the water's temperature, viscosity, shape, smell, and taste. She tells him this adds character to the magic. Iko summons 2 water balls to demonstrate. Kunon touches them and feels that one is cold and the other is warm. Genie explains that mastering these details separates normal mages from great ones. Kunon immediately puts this to the test and summons a small water drop into a teacup. He asks Iko to drink it. Iko takes a sip and tastes plum juice. Genie freaks out again because she stayed up all night planning this lesson. She expected Kunon to struggle with it for weeks, but he copies her trick on the very first try. Genie admits she feels totally outmatched. Kunon promises to learn every single alteration she throws at him. Kunon continues his training late into the night. He lies in bed and holds an apple in each hand. He knows one is red and one is green, but he still cannot understand the concept of color because he has never seen anything. He realizes he needs to grasp colors to fully master his magic and create his fake eyes. The next day, he sits at the wooden table with Iko. He asks for a cup of hot water instead of tea. He uses his magic and creates a large water bubble floating over a bowl of apples. Suddenly, the bubble pops and splashes everywhere. Kunon gasps and looks down at the table. He tells Iko that he just saw something. Iko gets incredibly excited and demands to know if he is telling the truth. She warns him that she will beat him up if he is lying. Kunon quickly explains he did not actually see with his eyes. He says he felt the colors through his magic when the water touched the apples. Iko grabs his cheeks and stretches his face. She scolds him for being so confusing and making bad jokes. Kunon picks up a green apple and asks if it is the red one. Iko corrects him and says it is green. She realizes he can sense the colors but does not know which name belongs to which color. Kunon grabs a red apple and asks again. Iko confirms it is red. She then tests him by asking him to count the apples in the bowl based on their colors. Kunon feels the apples with his magic and correctly guesses 3 red apples and 2 green apples. Iko screams in joy and hugs him tightly. Kunon's magical water acts exactly like a radar for colors. Lord Gurian hears the amazing news and calls Iko into his office to discuss Kunon's progress. He notes that Kunon can sense colors in a small range when his magic touches an object. Kunon even uses this trick to read picture books by feeling the colored ink on the pages. Lord Gurion feels incredibly relieved and offers Iko a chance to return to the main house to work. Iko refuses the offer and explains that Kunon is working hard to change his life. She wants to stay by his side and support his goals. Lord Gurion smiles and appreciates her dedication. Iko immediately ruins the touching moment by demanding a massive pay raise. Lord Gurion just laughs out loud at her greed. Later, Kunon prepares a surprise for Genie. He stands in the garden with Iko and wants to show off his color manipulation. He focuses his magic and creates a giant red water sphere. Iko praises the beautiful color and compares it to a white rabbit's eye. Kunon pushes his magic further to make the sphere even bigger so he can sense the color better. He accidentally loses control, and the giant water ball explodes violently. A massive cloud of thick red water erupts into the sky. It sprays everywhere and covers the entire garden. Kunon's parents rush outside after hearing the blast. They see Kunon and Iko completely drenched in red liquid. It looks exactly like a gruesome murder scene. Kunon's mother screams in sheer terror and faints on the grass. Lord Gurion furiously yells at Kunon for terrifying his mother. Iko tries to defend him by explaining it is just red water, but Lord Gurion does not care at all. He grounds Kunon and revokes his allowance for 2 full months. He also docks Iko's pay for 3 months. Iko falls to her knees in absolute despair because she lost her precious money. Lord Gurion continues screaming at them for being so reckless. Genie watches the entire disaster from the sidelines. She ignores the yelling and focuses entirely on Kunon's magic. She realizes his power is growing at an insane rate. She firmly believes Kunon will eventually earn the legendary title of the Cerulean Sorcerer. Kunon turns 9 years old and his family prepares to send him away to the Royal Academy for Noble Children so he can further his magical studies. Lord Gurion calls his older son Ixio into his study to discuss a serious matter regarding Kunon. He explains his plan to finally send Kunon to the Academy for Noble Children. Lord Gurion worries deeply about this decision because Kunon has barely left the mansion since the day he was born, and he fears his youngest son will be completely terrified of strangers in the outside world. He asks Ixio to watch over his younger brother and help him adjust to the new environment. Hearing this request, Ixio immediately remembers a time in the past when he tried to get Kunon to simply play outside in the yard. Back then, Kunon was too depressed and scared to even hold his hand, leaving Ixio feeling totally helpless and guilty. But things are very different now. Ixio stands tall in front of his father and firmly promises that he will protect Kunon at any cost this time around, vowing to step up as a proper big brother no matter what challenges they face. Meanwhile, Kunon hangs out in the library with his maid Iko and his manners teacher, Lady Flora. Iko gets super excited about Kunon's water magic and asks if he can use a special hydromancy spell to help her find her future husband. Kunon jokes around and smoothly tells Iko that she is a fine woman and men will definitely be all over her soon. He even flirts a bit, saying that if he was not the second son of a marquis, he would just take her as his own bride right now. Iko blushes and laughs, telling him to stop saying such ridiculous things to a woman who is more than 10 years older than him. Lady Flora watches them joke around and notes how incredibly cheerful Kunon has become lately. She points out that he is much more adorable and lively compared to the gloomy, depressed boy she first met when she started tutoring him. Kunon then drinks some tea and praises its rich flavor, thinking it is a fancy 12-year vintage imported from a foreign kingdom. Iko quickly corrects him and reveals it is actually just cheap domestic tea from their own region. They all burst out laughing at his silly mistake, realizing he can be a little shallow and overly dramatic sometimes. Later that night, Iko escorts Kunon through the dark estate to see his father. The night air is freezing cold, and Iko starts shivering uncontrollably as they walk. Kunon decides to help her out and uses his magic to create 2 massive dark water bubbles. He explains that he encased the warm water in a super soft and stretchy magical membrane. Iko hugs one of the bubbles and absolutely loves how warm and squishy it feels against the cold air. Kunon mentions it is just a prototype for now, but he plans to eventually turn it into a comfortable waterbed to sleep in. As they keep walking toward the main hall, Kunon wonders why his father summoned him so late in the evening. He worries that he might have done something wrong and is about to get yelled at again. He brings up the time he accidentally turned the garden into a sea of blood by blowing up a red water sphere. Iko reassures him that the blood sea incident only happened because he literally told her they were going all out with his magic, so he probably is not in trouble for that specific mess anymore. They soon arrive at the main hall where the elderly butler Valen warmly greets them. Ixio is waiting there too, and asks if Kunon needs someone to hold his hand to walk inside. Kunon declines the offer and explains that his magical sensing abilities now allow him to perceive his surroundings perfectly, so he does not need a guide anymore. They walk into the grand room where Lord Gurion and Kunon's mother are waiting on the sofa. Lord Gurion explains that Lady Flora gave him a great report and confirmed that Kunon has already mastered all the material covered at the Noble Academy. He asks Kunon if he has any interest in actually attending the school now. Kunon flatly refuses the idea. He states that he does not want to trouble anyone at the academy and has other magical priorities to focus his time on. His mother chimes in and explains that since his circumstances as a blind child are special, the king himself gave Kunon official permission to make his schooling completely optional. Kunon immediately calls this out as blatant nepotism and rolls his blindfolded eyes. Lord Gurion gets visibly annoyed by the accusation and tells Kunon to stop complaining about every little thing. Kunon tries to quickly change the subject by thanking his father for working so hard to provide for the family, but Lord Gurion threatens to cut off his allowance for 6 full months if he brings up the Bloodsea incident or complains again. Lord Gurion then calms down and explains the real reason he wants Kunon to go to the school. He brings up Princess Mirika, Kunon's arranged fiancée. He warns Kunon that if he completely ignores his noble obligations, it will make Mirika look terrible in high society and ruin her reputation. This argument finally gets Kunon to agree, even though he still complains that the whole thing is a massive hassle. Lord Gurion clarifies that Kunon does not have to attend the academy for years like a normal student. He only needs to show up 5 times to take the specific advancement exams and secure his official graduation certificate. Ixio happily adds that he and Mirika will both graduate after the very next exam, so Kunon can take the tests right alongside them and finish quickly. Their mother gets super excited about the news and immediately calls Iko over to start taking Kunon's measurements so they can tailor him some brand new school clothes, shoes, and a nice coat. Lord Gurion gives Ixio one final warning before they leave the room, noting that other royals might try to approach Kunon and Mirika at school to cause trouble. Ixio confidently promises to stay by their side the entire time to ensure nothing bad happens. A few days later, Mirika visits the mansion to hang out before the term starts. She sits on the sofa petting a black cat and expresses how thrilled she is that Kunon is finally going to school with her. She promises to act as his senior and personally escort him around the campus. Kunon admits he does not really know what to expect from a crowded school environment, but he jokes that all the boys who are secretly in love with Mirika will definitely be insanely jealous of him for hanging out with her. Mirika proudly declares that she is actually very popular and has exactly 5 boys chasing after her affections. Kunon laughs at her confidence and decides he might need to buy a new sturdy cane just to defend himself from her angry suitors. On the actual day of the exam, everyone gathers outside the mansion to see the boys off. Kunon steps out wearing an incredibly flashy and elegant outfit. He has a white fur-collared coat, a fancy purple bow tie, a black mask covering his eyes, and a shiny golden staff. He poses dramatically and acts exactly like a dashing prince straight out of a classic storybook. Iko swoons over how handsome he looks, and even Mirika is thoroughly impressed by his confidence. Kunon jokes that his true princely identity has finally been revealed to the world, while Ixio just sighs at his brother's ridiculous and shallow antics. They hop into a luxurious blue horse-drawn carriage and wave goodbye to their parents and the maids. As the carriage rolls smoothly through the lush green countryside, Kunon marvels at how little the vehicle shakes. Ixio explains that their father specifically requested a magic-powered carriage so the bumpy roads would not hurt their backs during the long trip. Ixio then turns serious and asks Kunon if he is nervous about traveling so far away from home for the very first time. Kunon says he feels totally fine because he has grown a lot stronger over the past few years. He tells Ixio that he knows his older brother used to blame himself whenever Kunon got hurt in the past, and he wants to clear the air. Kunon openly admits that he used to hate his life and genuinely wanted to just disappear, but discovering magic changed his entire worldview. Now, his drive to live is so intense that he plans to outlive everyone on the planet, even if the rest of humanity perishes around him. Ixio is a little creeped out by how extreme and slightly unhinged Kunon's determination is, but he is ultimately just happy that his little brother actually wants to live a long life. Kunon then senses they are nearing the school because he can feel a massive crowd of people ahead. The carriage soon arrives at the massive white stone academy. The place is completely packed with students walking around. Mirika runs up to greet them near the entrance. Kunon immediately starts flirting with her, saying he just wants to hear her beautiful voice first thing in the morning and calling her the most adorable girl around. Mirika plays along with the banter and jokes that if he did not think she was cute, she would tear his fancy bow tie right off his neck. As they walk down the cobblestone path, Kunon feels overwhelmed by the sheer number of people and loud voices echoing off the walls. He notes that his past depressed self would have completely panicked and recoiled in this chaotic environment. He then turns to Mirika and randomly asks if he can act like a girl for a little while to ease his nerves. Mirika smiles, accepts the bizarre request without question, and agrees to act like a boy to match his energy. They hold hands and walk toward the main building. A female teacher with purple hair and glasses named Professor Cast approaches them. She checks her pocket watch and introduces herself as Kunon's official guide for the day. Kunon introduces himself and casually mentions that he is biologically a boy but is currently acting as a beautiful girl, so he offers her a polite, exaggerated curtsy. Professor Cast stares at him in utter confusion and instantly realizes that showing this weird, eccentric kid around is going to be a massive headache. Ixio tells Cast he is leaving Kunon in her care for the tests and promises to meet up with them later for lunch. Meanwhile, inside the academy, the sixth Prince Lyle stands by a large window with his group of lackeys. They watch Kunon walking through the courtyard holding hands with Mirika. Lyle's friends relentlessly mock Kunon, calling him a roly-poly and completely dismissing the legendary rumors about his hero's scar. They think he looks weak, blind, and pathetic. Lyle glares out the window with a look of pure frustration and anger. He hates seeing his sister Mirika spending time with someone he views as a complete loser. Unable to handle his rage, Lyle orders his friends to follow him so they can go confront the new kid directly. In a quiet classroom, Professor Cast hands Kunon his exam paper. She explains the rules and mentions that his testing schedule is completely rushed because his father and the king specifically ordered the school to speed things up as a special exception. Kunon casually replies that his father and the king are total besties, openly calling the whole situation corrupt nepotism to her face. Cass tries her hardest to ignore his blunt comments about high society politics and just tells him to start writing. Kunon begins the test but refuses to stay quiet, constantly chatting with Cast about random things the entire time. Later on, Cast sits alone at her desk to grade his papers. She expects a total disaster since he never stopped talking, but her eyes go wide with absolute shock when she checks the answers. Kunon got every single question perfectly right across all the different subjects. Cast slams her head onto the wooden desk in sheer frustration, completely unable to comprehend how a blind kid who never shuts up could score a flawless grade. When lunchtime arrives, Kunon and Mirika walk down a grand hallway together to meet up with Ixio. Suddenly, Prince Lyle and his gang block their path. Lyle yells at Mirika to stay away from Kunon. Ixio quickly steps right in front of Kunon to protect him from the angry prince. Lyle glares at Ixio and calls him the big brother of the roly-poly. His lackeys back him up and demand that Ixio show proper respect to royalty. Ixio stays calm but firmly asks why a royal prince is aggressively targeting his little brother on his very first day of school. Lyle completely loses his temper and screams that he does not need permission to speak to anyone. He insults Ixio and tells him to get lost immediately. Kunon decides he has heard enough of this bullying. He quietly grips his golden staff and channels his magic without drawing attention. Without anyone noticing the source, countless dark, swirling water bubbles begin to float around the crowded hallway. Kunon acts completely innocent and leans his head softly against Ixio's chest, pretending to be terrified of the loud bullies. Suddenly, Lyle feels something strange and looks down. A massive dark liquid stain spreads right across the front of his trousers. One of Kunon's invisible water bubbles popped directly on his crotch, making it look exactly like he just wet his pants in front of everyone. The entire hallway goes dead silent as all the students stare at the prince's wet trousers. Lyle's face turns bright red in sheer panic. He starts waving his hands wildly, desperately screaming that he did not pee himself. His own friends look at him in absolute shock and disgust, backing away slightly. Humiliated beyond belief, Lyle turns around and runs down the hallway as fast as he can, with his confused lackeys scrambling right behind him. Kunon smirks behind his mask and calmly states that a major nuisance has been dealt with. After the crazy confrontation, the three of them head to the dining hall to finally eat. They sit down at a large wooden table and order hamburgers. Ixio looks completely stressed out and asks who that angry blonde kid was. Mirika casually reveals that the bully was actually her older brother, Prince Lyle. Kunon acts totally surprised by this new information. He innocently claims that he thought all older brothers cherished their younger siblings, clearly praising Ixio for being such a great protector to him. Ixio blushes heavily at the compliment, but his anxiety quickly takes over again. He holds his head in his hands and completely panics about how he is going to report this disaster to their father. They just publicly humiliated a royal prince on Kunon's first day of school, and Ixio knows Lord Gurion is going to be furious about the political fallout. Meanwhile, Kunon and Mirika completely ignore Ixio's mental breakdown. They happily bite into their hamburgers and agree that the food is absolutely delicious. Ixio just sighs deeply and prays to the gods that they can somehow manage to graduate without causing any more massive incident. Meanwhile, Prince Lyle storms down the academy hallway with his followers in tow, completely furious about the humiliating incident with his trousers. He hears other students whispering about whether he wet himself and aggressively denies it, shouting that he did no such thing. He feels incredibly frustrated that everyone in the castle and the school constantly talks behind his back, but never says anything to his face. When Professor Cast spots him running and tells him to walk quietly, he completely loses his temper and tells her to shut up, unable to contain his rage against everyone around him. Back at the dining table, Mirika explains the political dynamics behind her brother's aggressive behavior to Kunon and Ixio. She points out that as the 6th prince, Lyle usually holds a higher rank than her, the 9th princess, but her engagement to Kunon completely changes the power balance. Since Kunon is known as the hero's scar, and is a talented sorcerer, his status is rapidly rising, meaning that once they officially debut into high society, their combined influence will eclipse Lyle's. Hearing this, Kunon jokes that his rising status might warrant kneeling in gratitude to the king next time they meet, though he quickly adds he would never bow down to another man like that. Kunon then casually suggests that he should go find Prince Lyle and apologize for the misunderstanding, but Mirika and Ixio instantly panic and shout at him to drop the idea, knowing it will only cause more chaos. Time passes, and the day of the final graduation exam finally arrives. Before heading to the academy in the afternoon, Kunon spends his morning in the estate's garden practicing his water magic with his teacher, Miss Genier. Under her instruction, he conjures a glowing sphere of water and practices altering its physical sensation. Genier tells him to make the water feel like an apple, and Kunon flawlessly executes the spell, proving his incredible control over his magical abilities. Later that day, Kunon arrives at the academy courtyard and reunites with Mirika and Ixio near their carriage. Mirika is thrilled to see him, but Kunon acts overly dramatic, claiming that since it is his last day hearing her voice at school, the world feels like it is fading into sorrow. Mirika points out that school does not end until the evening, instantly cheering him up, while Ixio just watches them banter and notes how eccentric they both are. Professor Cast soon gathers them and explains that they will be taking their final exam in a regular classroom alongside the other students. She randomly starts venting about her own life choices, explaining that she only became a teacher because she followed a man she loved to the noble academy, but he ended up failing his exams while she got the job. Kunon and Mirika are completely baffled as to why their teacher is sharing such depressing personal relationship trauma right before a major test. Once they enter the classroom, Cast asks Mirika to formally introduce her fiancé to the rest of the students. Kunon steps forward, strikes a dramatic pose in his fur-collared cape and mask, and confidently introduces himself as Ixio's little brother and Mirika's future husband. He then bluntly states that he is incredibly relieved to see them surrounded by classmates, as he had genuinely started to worry that Mirika and Ixio were total loners with absolutely no friends. Mirika quickly clarifies that she simply asked the other students to give them some space so she could enjoy her school life in peace. Kunon plays along, dramatically holding his hand over his eye patch and acting overjoyed that he does not have to console her about being a social outcast. The whole class, including Cast, watches his bizarre performance with deep concern until Mirika laughs and points out that Kunon is actually the one who is perfectly fine having no friends. Kunon drops his dramatic act immediately and completely agrees, stating that humans actually do surprisingly well on their own. While this is happening, Prince Lyle stands in a different hallway, ignoring the call to head to the exam room. Cast eventually finds him and firmly reminds him that even a royal prince is not allowed to be late for the final test. Lyle reluctantly agrees and heads to the classroom. During the exam, Kunon sits next to Mirika, while Lyle sits further back, still seething with anger over the constant gossip surrounding him. Unable to handle his frustration anymore, Lyle clenches his fists and mutters about how much he despises the people at the school. Suddenly, Kunon approaches Lyle's desk, grabs his hand with an incredibly tight grip, and cheerfully introduces himself as his future brother-in-law. Lyle completely panics and demands to know what Kunon is doing, trying desperately to pull his hand away, but Kunon's grip is shockingly strong. Kunon ignores Lyle's protests and enthusiastically compliments his manly voice, claiming that he can tell just from feeling his hands that Lyle must have a very handsome face. He leans in close and says that if he could see, he would stare a hole right through Lyle's face. The intense, unsolicited affection leaves Lyle completely flustered, blushing deeply and sweating in sheer panic. He frantically calls out to Mirika for help, but she just giggles at the sight of her tough older brother getting so incredibly embarrassed. Lyle screams at Kunon to let him go, and Kunon finally releases his grip, cheerfully thanking the prince for his time. The entire classroom watches the bizarre interaction, leaving Lyle utterly humiliated once again. Soon after, the exam concludes and Professor Cass stands at the front of the room to announce the results. She happily declares that every single student has passed their final test. The classroom erupts into cheers, and Ixio's friends gather around to congratulate him on his success. Kunon and Mirika celebrate graduating together, clearly thrilled to be done with their schooling. As the sun sets, the students gather outside the Grand Stone Academy building to head home. Kunon waves cheerfully from the window of his luxurious carriage, shouting his goodbyes to everyone and promising to cross paths again. Professor Cast watches them leave and reflects on how quirky but bright Kunon was, then casually wonders if his older brother is single, instantly regretting saying it out loud. Meanwhile, Prince Lyle watches their carriage depart from a high window, his expression unreadable as he turns to his followers and simply orders them to move out. A few days later, back at the Gurion estate, Kunon continues his magical training in the garden with Janae and his maid, Iko. Janae reads from a spellbook and commands Kunon to perform a series of rapid alterations on his water magic. Kunon effortlessly conjures a massive, swirling water bubble using his golden staff. Janae orders him to split the bubble into 10 separate spheres, color them red, blue, and green, and then change their texture. Kunon executes every command flawlessly, turning the floating orbs into spiked, colorful hazards. Janae praises his excellent work, but Kunon mentions he wants to try adding shape and temperature to the texture as well. With a flick of his wand, he transforms one of the water spheres into a highly detailed spectral white dove that perfectly mimics a real bird and flies away into the sky. Janae is absolutely stunned by this display of advanced magic, dropping her spellbook on the grass in pure shock. Later, they sit down at a garden table for tea, and Janae announces that she needs to reveal a shocking truth to him. Kunon immediately jumps to conclusions, dramatically assuming that she is actually a goddess of the night sky who must return to the heavens. Janae completely shuts down his fantasy and plainly states that she is resigning because she has absolutely nothing left to teach him. She explains that she only knows elementary magic with no attacking capabilities, and Kunon has long since surpassed her skill level. Kunon refuses to accept this and insists that he still needs her, claiming that his attempts to deceive her with his little magical tricks are what helped him broaden his magical range. Janae admits that she knew he was trying to deceive her and that she had to rack her brain to come up with lessons just to keep up with his rapid growth. Kunon asks if she is quitting over her salary and offers to have his father give her a massive raise, but Janae angrily yells that the money is the exact problem. She feels it is unbearable to get paid so much when she can no longer fulfill her duties as a proper instructor. She grabs Kunon by the shoulders and firmly tells him that he needs to find an exceptional sorcerer to guide him now because she has hit her absolute limit. Kunon desperately begs her to stay, shouting that he wants her as his teacher so he can keep deceiving her more elegantly. To prove his immense power, he effortlessly summons an entire menagerie of ghostly, translucent green animals around the garden, including a cat, a rabbit, a pig, a dog, and a deer. Janae looks around at the incredible display and realizes that Kunon is an unmistakable genius. She formally refuses his request to stay, knowing she must leave to improve her own skills so she does not fall entirely behind her own pupil. Following Janae's departure, Kunon's manners teacher, Lady Flora, also resigns since he has officially graduated from the Noble Academy. Kunon sits in the estate's drawing room with Iko, feeling incredibly lonely and depressed about losing both of his teachers. He tells Iko that he fears she will be the next one to leave him. Iko jokes about resigning to find a handsome, wealthy servant to marry, but seeing how genuinely sad Kunon is, she drops the act. Kunon conjures 2 glowing spirit rabbits and mentions an old wives' tale about rabbits dying from loneliness, clearly projecting his own feelings. Iko smiles warmly and promises she will never leave him to get married, instantly lifting his spirits. Later that evening, the family gathers in the formal dining room for dinner. Kunon's father, Lord Gurion, asks if Janae specifically instructed him to find an exceptional sorcerer. Ixio chimes in, mentioning a rumor he heard at school about a legendary royal sorcerer named Zeonli Finrol, who is supposedly incredibly powerful and beautiful. Kunon immediately declares that he wants Zeonli to be his new teacher. Lord Gurion shuts the idea down instantly, explaining that inviting a royal sorcerer to their home is entirely impossible. He clarifies that royal sorcerers operate strictly under the king's direct command, completely ignoring noble hierarchies and status. They rarely leave the castle, and contacting them is heavily restricted. Unfazed by the political realities, Kunon happily pitches a completely flawed and vague plan. He suggests that he will simply accompany his father to the castle, run into the royal sorcerers by some means or another, and then become their apprentice by some means or another. Lord Gurion angrily scolds him for presenting such a terrible plan with absolutely zero details, pointing out that the success rate would be less than 10%. However, Kunon's mother absolutely loves the idea and begs her husband to do whatever it takes to make her son's dream come true. Unable to say no to his wife, Lord Gurion reluctantly agrees to at least bring the matter up with the king, though he warns Kunon not to get his hopes up. Meanwhile, inside the grand stone walls of the royal sorcerer's tower, a silver-haired girl approaches the curly-haired sorcerer Zeonli, who is quietly reading a book. She hands him a stack of documents regarding a new apprentice application. Zeonli dismisses the request without looking at it, stating that an apprentice-level sorcerer studying under a royal sorcerer is completely unheard of, and he does not care about pleasing nobles who have connections to the king. The girl then casually mentions that her little sister, Princess Mirica, is completely head over heels for this specific applicant. Intrigued by the royal connection, Zeonli asks for the child's name, and his eyes narrow in deep interest when he hears the name Kunon Gurion. A few days after receiving the mysterious summons, Kunon rides inside a luxurious horse-drawn carriage alongside his father, Lord Gurion, heading directly toward the royal castle. His father admits that getting permission to meet the king privately was already a massive surprise. He is even more shocked that the notoriously reclusive royal sorcerers have taken a specific interest in Kunon's abilities. Lord Gurion asks Kunon what kind of magic he has been practicing recently to garner such attention. Kunon demonstrates his recent progress by manipulating his water magic to form the shape of a small black cat right there inside the carriage. He explains that he initially could only make transparent water shapes. He has now figured out how to add colors like white and calico. He adds that he eventually wants to study enough to replicate the sound of a cat's meow perfectly. Lord Gurion is absolutely delighted by the magical cat and eagerly pets it. He marvels at how real the water feels. Kunon suggests that with their family's wealth and power, they could easily collect real, cute cats from all over the world. His father immediately shuts the idea down. He states that he would never get any work done if there were real cats running around the estate. He also adds that keeping indoor pets is too dangerous for Kunon. A blind person could easily trip over a small animal running around his feet. Kunon appreciates his father's concern, but assures him that he does not need to worry about his mobility anymore. He then suggests that they could just keep the cats outside in the yard instead. He mentions that his maid, Iko, told him that keeping outdoor cats is actually a sign of high status among nobles. Bringing them inside is considered crude. Lord Gurion doubts the maid's knowledge. Kunon adds that Princess Mirica also completely agreed with this assessment. Hearing that the princess endorses the idea, Lord Gurion reconsiders. He admits that keeping cats outside might actually be a solid plan for their household. Eventually, the carriage arrives at the massive stone gates of the royal castle. As they step out, they are immediately greeted by Lady Raisha. She is the second princess of the kingdom and Mirica's older sister. Kunon formally introduces himself and politely bows to his future sister-in-law. Raisha is thrilled to finally meet him. She notes that Mirica talks about him constantly. She then notices the small black cat sitting near Kunon's feet and crouches down to pet it. She comments on how adorable it is. The moment she touches it, the cat pops back into a puddle of regular water. Lord Gurion and Raisha are completely stunned to realize the cat was made entirely of magic. Raisha remarks that Kunon is even more skilled than the rumors suggested. Lord Gurion then excuses himself to attend his formal audience with the king. He leaves Kunon in Raisha's care. He tells Kunon to arrange his own carriage ride home later and to enjoy his time exploring the castle. Raisha happily takes charge and offers to guide Kunon directly to the Black Tower. This is the official headquarters of the royal sorcerers located on the far side of the castle grounds. As they walk through the grand hallways, Raisha explains some of the political dynamics of the royal family. She mentions that most kingdoms pass the throne to the firstborn prince. Their country operates on a meritocracy, meaning that birth order can be overturned based on a royal sibling's individual achievements. Raisha casually reveals that she completely relinquished her own right to the throne so she could focus entirely on becoming a sorcerer. Kunon is fascinated by this. He notes that he can sense an overwhelming amount of magical power emanating from the Black Tower up ahead. Raisha then suddenly stops and warns Kunon about the political dangers of the castle. She advises him not to carelessly affiliate himself with any specific royal faction. She also tells him to avoid signing or saying anything that could be used against him in a succession dispute. Kunon agrees to be careful. He quickly changes the subject by showing off a new magic trick he invented to move around faster. He explains that he creates an extremely thin layer of water on the soles of his boots and freezes it. This effectively turns his shoes into ice skates that allow him to glide effortlessly across the stone floors. Raisha is incredibly excited by the idea and immediately begs him to cast a spell on her shoes as well. Kunan agrees and applies the ice sleigh magic to her boots. He tries to warn her about the lack of friction before she takes off. Raisha completely ignores his warning and immediately starts skating wildly down the hallway at top speed. She finds the spell amazing but quickly loses control. She sprints past startled maids and guards while laughing uncontrollably. Kunan casts the spell on his own boots and easily skates after her. He enjoys the fast-paced ride. Their reckless skating causes a massive commotion in the castle. This eventually catches the attention of Lord Vios, a high-ranking knight clad in silver armor. Vios furiously chases after them. He shouts for them to stop running in the halls. Instead of slowing down, Raisha gets even more thrilled by the chase. She yells at Kunan to go faster to outrun the angry knight. Despite their speed, Vios eventually catches up to them and puts an end to their joyride. Shortly after, Kunan and Raisha find themselves kneeling on the floor in a grand office. They deeply apologize for causing such a mess. They are kneeling before Rondimond Akthard, the Grand Master of the Royal Sorcerers. He is a distinguished man with wavy brown hair and a mustache. Rondimond finds the situation hilarious. He is amused that a child sorcerer managed to cause so much trouble and get caught by the kingdom's top knights. Kunan officially introduces himself to the Grand Master. Rondimond is thoroughly impressed by Kunan's magical aura. He notes that his power is on a completely different level from typical sorcerers. He asks Kunan about his magical crest. Kunan explains that he bears a water crest on his left shoulder and assumes it is a 2-star rank. Rondimond confirms this. He explains that there are 7 elemental crests and 5 ranks. He states that 2-star is the most statistically common. He adds that he is also a 2-star sorcerer, but his element is wind. Kunan immediately calls out the Grandmaster's lie. He states that he can easily sense that Rondimond's magical density is vastly superior to his own. Kunan uses a bizarre analogy to explain his feelings. He compares his and Raisha's magic to regular cheese. He says Rondimond's magic feels like premium stinky blue cheese. Rondimond playfully warns Kunan never to call him Grand Master Blue Cheese again. He confirms Kunan's suspicion by revealing that he actually possesses a 4-star wind crest. Kunan admits he does not fully grasp the significance of crest ranks yet. Rondimond explains that the total amount of magical power is the only clear distinction. True strength comes from devotion and hard work. With the introductions out of the way, Rondimond decides it is time to test Kunan's actual abilities. He leads the group outside to a grassy courtyard near the tower. A large group of royal sorcerers wearing black cloaks gathers around to watch the evaluation. They are clearly excited to see the famous hero Scar in action. Rondimond instructs a young ash-blonde sorcerer named Victo to step forward and demonstrate his magic. Victo uses his wand to summon a cluster of floating, iridescent water bubbles using the same spell Kunan uses. Rondimond then turns to Kunan and orders him to use his own magic to conquer Victo's bubbles. Kunan immediately realizes the extreme difficulty of this task. He has never tried to manipulate water that was created and controlled by another sorcerer before. He remembers his past lessons with his friend Oliver. Oliver taught him that manipulating existing water is fundamentally different from creating it. Despite his doubts, Kunan focuses his energy. He attempts to seize control of Victo's spell. He struggles immensely and sweats as he fights against Victo's magical resistance. After a tense standoff, Kunan successfully pulls 2 of the large water bubbles away from Victo. He brings them over to his side. The observing royal sorcerers are absolutely shocked that a child managed to steal control of another sorcerer's spell so effectively. Victo is so impressed that he instantly begs Rondimond to let him take Kunan as his personal apprentice. Raisha aggressively mocks Victo. She points out that he cannot even take care of himself since he just got dumped by his girlfriend. She completely embarrasses him in front of the group. Rondimond ignores their bickering and praises Kunan's incredible talent. He admits he is having a lot of fun. He asks Kunan to show them more of his unique magic. Kunan happily agrees and decides to demonstrate a spell he calls Super Soft Body. He casts a massive, translucent green water bubble entirely around Rondimond. The Grand Master soon realizes that the water membrane is incredibly soft and bouncy. He begins floating and bouncing high into the air. He laughs hysterically at the absurd sensation. The other sorcerers watch in sheer envy. They shout at Rondimond to let them have a turn inside the bouncy bubble. Kunan explains that the bubble is so elastic that a person could easily use it to jump straight to the 2nd floor of the castle. Raisha then asks Kunan if he can create animal shapes other than cats. She specifically asks if he can make human dolls out of water. Kunan confirms he can and immediately conjures a highly detailed water doll shaped exactly like a maid. He He explains that while he can make human shapes, their movements are still very unnatural. He mentions that he tried making the water doll fly as an experiment. It looked deeply unsettling and was poorly received by everyone who saw it. Naturally, the royal sorcerers are incredibly eager to see this creepy flying doll. They beg him to demonstrate it. Kunan obliges and sends the water maid flying high up the side of the castle tower. Unfortunately, a real maid working inside the castle looks out the window. She sees the realistic water doll plummeting past the glass. She screams in absolute terror, believing a real person is falling to their death. The panic alerts the castle guards. Lord Vios rushes to the scene. He finds Kunan and Raisha at the center of the chaos yet again. After things calm down, Kunan and Raisha are forced to bow their heads. They apologize to the knights and the sorcerers for causing another massive disturbance. Victo tries to defend them. Raisha blames him for starting the mess, leading to another argument about his recent breakup. Despite the trouble, Rondamon tells Kunan not to worry. He happily announces that Kunan has officially passed the test. The Grand Master promises to personally assign an exceptional sorcerer to be Kunan's new teacher. Kunan is thrilled, but he worries about the political implications. He fears that accepting a royal sorcerer as a master might imply he is joining a specific royal faction. Rondamon quickly dismisses the concern. He assures him that royal sorcerers care absolutely nothing for politics or noble status. Curious about the boy's ambitions, Rondamon asks Kunan what his ultimate goal in life is. Without hesitation, Kunan states that his main goal is to use magic to create fully functional real eyeballs so he can finally see. Rondamon touches his chin thoughtfully. He finds the idea incredibly intriguing and ambitious. As the sun begins to set, the fun comes to an abrupt end. Kunan's father, Lord Gurion, tracks them down. Lord Gurion is furious that he has received multiple reports of his son causing chaos around the castle on his very first visit. Raisha tries to defend Kunan. She takes the blame by saying they simply got carried away. Lord Gurion refuses to accept any excuses. He delivers a stern lecture. He states that anyone who uses magic must always be held strictly accountable for their actions. He explains that magic is raw power. It should never be used to harm others, cause panic, or blindly follow reckless orders. He firmly tells Kunan that as long as he wields such power, he bears the ultimate responsibility for its consequences. Kunan bows his head respectfully. He sincerely apologizes to his father for his careless behavior. Afterward, Lord Gurion leaves in his carriage. He assumes Kunan will find his own way home. Kunan suddenly realizes that it is getting dark. He is incredibly late for a planned dinner date with Princess Mirika. He panics over his appearance. He worries that it would be terribly ungentlemanly to show up to his fiancée's estate all sweaty and out of breath from running. Seeing his distress, Raisha comes up with a wild solution. She reminds Kunan that she possesses a wind crest. She suggests they combine their magic to fly directly to Mirika's estate. Kunan is hesitant. He remembers a promise he made to himself that his first time flying alone with someone would be with Mirika. He also worries about his reputation. He thinks Mirika might misunderstand if he shows up falling out of the sky with her older sister. Raisha completely brushes off his concerns. She states she has no fiancé to worry about and insists they just do it. Left with no other viable options to make it on time, Kunan reluctantly agrees. He conjures a massive, translucent water bubble around the two of them. Raisha then channels her wind magic. She blasts the bubble straight up into the sunset sky. The combination of their powers launches them into the air at a terrifying speed. Kunan screams in panic as they rocket through the clouds. He begs Raisha to slow down. She is having the time of her life and pushes them to go even faster. They fly frantically through the darkening sky until they spot Mirika's estate below. They attempt to descend to the ground. Their chaotic magic completely fails them at the last second. This causes them to plummet out of the sky. They crash violently onto the dark tiled roof of a building near the estate. Luckily, Kunan manages to deploy a soft, glowing magical bubble just before impact. This saves them from getting crushed against the hard tiles. They lie flat on the roof, completely exhausted but relieved to be alive. Raisha happily notes that the experiment proves they can indeed fly, even if the landing needs work. Just as they catch their breath, a familiar voice calls out to them in the dark. Lord Veos steps out onto the roof with a deeply unamused expression. He glares at the two mages. He points out that this is the third time today they have done something incredibly dangerous and broken the rules. Kunan and Raisha sheepishly smile and apologize to the angry knight once again. Meanwhile, completely unaware of the absolute chaos unfolding on her roof, Mirika stands inside her bedroom. She happily tries on different dresses. She admires herself in the mirror wearing a beautiful blue and purple gown. She nervously asks her maid if Kunan will like the color. Her maid assures her that since it is her favorite color, Kunon will definitely love it. The maid smiles to herself. She is amazed at how completely head over heels the princess is. She wonders just what kind of incredible gentleman Kunon Gurion must be to capture her heart so thoroughly. Out on the roof, Lord Veas continues his strict lecture. He reminds Raisha that as a member of the royal family, she needs to start acting with more awareness and respect for the rules. He leaves the two troublemakers to suffer the consequences of their wild, magical flight. Meanwhile, Princess Murica is a nervous wreck as she paces around her room to prepare for her very first date outside the castle walls. Her maid Laura tries to calm her down and remind her that everything will be fine since it is completely natural to be anxious. Soon enough, her guest Kunon Gurion arrives at the estate looking sharp in a dark cloak with a blindfold over his eyes and holding his golden staff. He smoothly greets Murica and compliments the beauty of the moon, joking that he hopes it looks nice since he cannot actually see it. Murica is wearing a stunning blue and white dress with a black bow, and she happily takes his hand to escort him for the evening. Laura watches them leave and is completely impressed by Kunon's gentlemanly behavior, realizing exactly why he managed to steal the princess's heart. They head over to a fancy, dimly lit restaurant for their dinner date. As they eat, Kunon toasts to the beautiful blue of Murica's eyes and dress, acting like a total romantic. He tells her all about his recent trip to the Black Tower and how he easily passed the magic test. He mentions that he is currently just waiting to hear who his new magic teacher will be. Kunon then starts using some pretty weird metaphors to describe his experiences. He compares the Grand Master's dense magical power to blue cheese and calls the meat on his plate refreshing. He also compares Murica's stories to bird-repelling charms swinging in a wheat field. Murica does not completely understand his strange jokes or what refreshing meat is supposed to mean, but she is just so happy to be with him that she does not even care. The royal guards and maids watching from the sidelines notice that Kunon is definitely a bit strange, but seeing Murica this happy makes it all okay. Kunon then gets serious for a moment and apologizes, saying that a dinner like this is the absolute best he can do for her right now. However, he promises that once they eventually get married, they will spend time together like this every single day and he will always walk right by her side. Murica gets incredibly flustered and overjoyed by his bold promise. Later that night, back in her own bedroom, Murica buries her face into a giant fluffy pillow and screams with pure happiness while kicking her legs. Her maid tells her she needs to calm down and go to sleep, but Murica is way too excited to listen. The following day, Kunon is back at his mansion sitting at his desk and writing down some magic reports. He eventually heads outside to the garden where his maid Iko is doing the laundry in a large wooden tub. Kunon decides to help out by using his magic to summon a bunch of floating bubbles with little faces on them. The bubbles pop over the clothes and easily clean all the dirt off. Iko scolds him for shutting himself in his room all day since he got back from the castle. She tells him that going outside and spending time in the sun is an important job for a growing child. They start joking around about his height, and Kunon asks if women really prefer tall men. Iko admits that some do, but she promises that she likes Kunon no matter if he is tall or short. Kunon smoothly replies that he likes her too, but then quickly catches himself and says he should not say things like that because it would be rude to his fiancée Murica. Iko blushes heavily and calls him a ladies' man for making her say all that. Kunon then changes the subject and asks if a letter has arrived about his new magic teacher, but Iko confirms that nothing has come yet. Meanwhile, over at the magic tower, a silver-haired sorcerer named Victo walks up the stairs and enters a very messy office filled with stacks of paper. He wakes up his senior, a black-haired sorcerer named Zionli who wears dark armor and has glowing red eyes. Zionli is annoyed about having his precious sleep interrupted, but Victo tells him that the Grand Master has officially assigned Zionli to be Kunon's new magic teacher. Zionli complains that this is exactly why he did not want to come to the tower today. Back at Kunon's house, Iko somehow finds out that Zionli Finrol is going to be Kunon's teacher, and she absolutely freaks out. She tells Kunon that Zionli is extremely famous and is rumored to be a magnificently gorgeous sorcerer that every woman in the kingdom knows about. Iko goes into a full panic, realizing she needs to meet this handsome man. She shouts that she needs to ask Kunon's father for a brand new maid outfit, do her makeup, fix her hair, and lose weight immediately so she does not look bad in front of him. Kunon just stands there totally confused by her sudden explosion of energy. Over at the royal castle, Murica's older sister Raisha is getting ready to head outside. As a royal sorcerer, Raisha needs a direct order from royalty to leave the grounds, so she uses her duty to guard Murica on her outing as the perfect excuse. Raisha is actually throwing a massive fit because she desperately wanted to be Kunon's magic teacher herself, and she cannot believe that Zionli got chosen instead. As Reisha and Mirika walk down the grand hallway, they run into two other blonde princesses named Evero Lee and Lidalia. The two snobby princesses try to mock Mirika by saying her fiancé's impressive reputation has nothing to do with her. Reisha immediately steps up and defends her sister. She tells the two princesses not to get cocky and casually mentions that they were recently reprimanded by the knights 3 times. The snobby princesses look shocked and frustrated as Reisha orders them to get out of the way. Reisha tells Mirika to just ignore them, and Mirika thanks her for the help before Reisha goes right back to whining about Zeonli getting the teaching job. A little while later, Kunan meets up with Mirika outside his estate in a beautiful garden. He immediately notices her scent and asks if she changed her perfume because it smells very mature and lovely. Mirika happily explains that she was told she is too young for perfume, so she just changed her soap instead. Kunan flirts right back, saying the floral scent has drawn him in like a butterfly to a flower. Just then, a fancy carriage pulls up next to them. Zeonli is sitting inside the carriage watching them flirt, and he grumbles about Kunan being a brat. Zeonli steps out of the carriage wearing his black spiked armor and carrying a silver staff. The moment he steps out, Kunan is completely blown away by the sheer density of his magical power. Kunan can sense that Zeonli's magic is thick and sticky, almost exactly like honey. Kunan introduces himself and asks if he can call him Teacher Honey. Zeonli tells him to piss off and demands to be called Master Zeonli. He also clarifies that he hates brats and has not actually accepted the teaching position yet. He explains that the Grand Master just told him there was an interesting kid he needed to meet, so he is only here to check Kunan out. A knight in silver armor steps out of the carriage next and introduces himself as Dario from the Third Order. Kunan instantly recognizes Dario as the knight who stared him down like a snake when he was running through the castle halls. Dario smiles and says that was just his job. Zeonli looks at Kunan and thinks he is a very strange kid, especially when Kunan starts teasing him about being a magnificently gorgeous sorcerer, even though Kunan cannot actually see what he looks like. They all sit down at a white table in the garden to have some tea and chat. Zeonli tells Kunan to stop flirting with the princess and have a fun discussion about magic with him instead. They start talking about compound spells, which involve dividing and rearranging magic circles to cast more complex magic. Zeonli asks Kunan how many sections he can handle. Kunan thinks for a second and says he can easily do 31 sections, and sometimes he can hit 32, but he occasionally fails. Zeonli is genuinely shocked to hear this because that number is insanely high for a kid. Zeonli proudly states that he can go up to 50 sections. Kunan is amazed and asks how that is even possible, but Zeonli turns it around and demands to know how Kunan managed to get past the 20-section hurdle in the first place. Kunan explains that he layered his crests and used a bunch of little tricks and alterations that he figured out completely on his own. Zeonli quickly realizes that Kunan is an absolute magical genius. The scene briefly cuts back to the magic tower where Victo and a white-haired girl are throwing a massive tantrum in a messy office. They are furious that Zeonli gets to teach Kunan because an exceptional talent like him does not come around very often, and they wanted him for themselves. Back in the garden, Zeonli tells Kunan that if he wants to learn the secret to doing 50 sections, he has to prove his worth and suck up to him fair and square. Kunan has zero pride when it comes to learning magic, so he immediately starts showering Zeonli with over-the-top compliments about his generosity and kindness. Zeonli tells him to stop calling him master until he officially acknowledges him, but he decides to show Kunan how awesome he is right now. Zeonli uses his 3-star Earth Crest to summon a massive towering stone wall right in the middle of the garden. He challenges Kunan to destroy the wall with magic, or else his chance to be his student is over. Before that, Zeonli also demands to see Kunan's famous waterbed spell. Kunan casts his magic and creates a giant, soft, translucent water bubble. Zeonli walks over, touches the bubble, and is instantly mesmerized by how soft and warm it feels. He presses his face against it and falls completely asleep right there on the grass. Kunan, Mirika, and Dario just stand around drinking tea and waiting for him to wake up. 2 whole hours pass before Zeonli finally opens his eyes. He asks Kunan if he gave up on breaking the wall. Kunan says he is ready and grabs his golden staff. Instead of using a powerful attack spell, Kunan casts his laundry bubble magic. Thick white smoke billows from the ground around the base of the wall. Kunan explains that he realized the wall was just made of hard dirt. By forcing the dirt to absorb way more water than it could handle, the structure became extremely fragile and crumbly. Within seconds, the massive wall completely collapses and washes away into nothing. Zeonli is highly impressed that Kunan saw the wall as dirt and chose to wash it away rather than wasting energy trying to use brute force. Zeonli officially declares that Kunon is now his student and calls him the luckiest kid in the world to have him as a master. Kunon is thrilled and grabs Mirika's hand, saying he is blessed to have found a great master and to have Princess Mirika by his side. Zeonli quickly shuts down the romantic moment by warning Kunon that his master always comes before his fiancée. Zeonli then looks at Mirika and brutally tells her that once Kunon becomes a famous sorcerer, women will be swarming all over him to fight for his attention. Hearing this, Mirika feels a sudden wave of deep insecurity. She realizes that Kunon is growing into an incredible sorcerer while she is still just a 9th princess with very low status. Dario speaks up and tells Zeonli to stop being so mean to the princess. Dario points out that Zeonli is the awkward type of guy who is mean to girls and will probably end up getting his own girl stolen right from under his nose because he does not know how to be kind. Zeonli just gets super annoyed and tells Dario to shut up. Later that night, Mirika stands alone in her dark bedroom and stares out the window at the starry sky. Fueled by Zeonli's harsh words and her own feelings of inadequacy, she clenches her fists and makes a firm vow to herself. She realizes she has to do something and change herself completely if she ever wants to secure her future and stay by Kunon's side. The day begins with Zeonli arriving at the estate to officially start Kunon's training. Zeonli calls Kunon the luckiest kid in the world for getting him as a teacher. Kunon happily welcomes his new master and says he is ready for any difficult training. He even jokes that he will cry if Zeonli holds back. Zeonli asks what Kunon wants to start with. Kunon immediately requests advanced techniques like a 3-dimensional magic circle, an oblique magic circle, or a 50-section compound spell. Instead of teaching him those right away, Zeonli dumps a massive pile of messy notes and diagrams on Kunon's desk. He tells Kunon to make clean copies of all the memos. Kunon is completely shocked and complains that he is just being used as a secretary. Zeonli casually agrees and says he needs someone to organize his scribbles. Kunon dramatically asks if Zeonli does not love him anymore. Zeonli bluntly replies that he never loved him in the first place. Kunon just laughs it off and praises Zeonli for being so merciless and cool. Meanwhile, Mirika and Dario wait outside the study. Zeonli tells them that the documents are state secrets, so they have to stay out until Kunon is finished. Mirika happily tells Kunon that she is rooting for him. While Kunon spends his time copying the endless notes, Zeonli just lies face down on a giant, comfortable water bubble that Kunon created for him. Kunon's maid watches this and notes that Zeonli really loves the waterbed spell. Mirika decides that she needs to become someone suitable for Kunon, so she starts practicing her sword skills with Dario in the garden. She admits she has a lot to improve and wants to practice in her spare time. She makes Dario promise not to tell Kunon about her secret training. They spar with wooden swords, and Dario eventually knocks her to the ground, but she refuses to give up. Back in the study, Kunon continues to struggle with Zeonli's terrible handwriting. He tells Zeonli that the letters look like earthworms writhing on the ground. Zeonli wakes up from his nap and tells Kunon to stop complaining. He explains that copying the notes is actually a very important form of training. Zeonli states that simply reading books only provides information. However, when a sorcerer analyzes the concepts in their head and physically writes them down, their body remembers the magic. The information turns into deep knowledge, and that knowledge directly translates into power. Kunon realizes the wisdom behind the task and immediately praises his master again. At the end of the day, Zeonli prepares to leave in his carriage. He tells Kunon to finish the rest of the copies by their next meeting. Kunon asks about a specific diagram he copied that looked like a spell. Zeonli explains that it is a blueprint for a magic tool and says it will be faster to just show him how it works. He tells Kunon to come visit him at his laboratory next time. Kunon agrees and is excited about the trip. Mirika is also thrilled because she gets to see Kunon often thanks to these lessons. A few days later, Kunon travels to the Grand Magic Castle where Zeonli works. Some of the young magic students notice Kunon and remark that he has grown taller and his magical power has increased. A silver-haired girl asks Kunon to have a magic battle with her, but another student says Kunon promised to do a flying magic experiment first. Before they can decide, Zeonli arrives and tells the kids to get out of the way. He takes Kunon directly to his laboratory. The other students are terrified because they think Zeonli's room is a demonic place. Inside the lab, Kunon is amazed by the massive stacks of papers and magical equipment everywhere. Zeonli asks Kunon if he knows what magic tools are. Kunon explains that they are tools powered by a sorcerer's mana, like a magical fire lamp. Zeonli confirms this and says that magical engineers make a living by creating these tools. He then shows Kunon the specific magic tool from the diagram. It is a white box designed to cook food. Zeonli explains that once it is finished, a person can use it to bake a piping hot apple pie right in their own room without needing a kitchen. Kunon is amazed by the idea. Zeonli then admits that he needs Kunon's help to finish it. Zeonli's earth magic is perfect for building the hard outer frame of the box, but he struggles to create the fine, soft internal mechanisms. He believes Kunon's precise water magic is exactly what the project needs. Kunon eagerly agrees to help, thrilled that the work will double as a fun magic experiment. Later, the Grand Master of the Magic Tower arrives to check on them. He invites Kunon and Zeonli to have lunch and discuss the essence of magic. During the meal, Kunon happily eats a sandwich and praises Zeonli. He tells the Grand Master that Zeonli works him to the bone, but is a wonderful master. He also notes that earth and water magic are highly compatible. Zeonli gets annoyed by all the public affection and tells Kunon to stop embarrassing him. The Grand Master laughs and mentions that Mirika could not join them because she is attending the entrance ceremony for the senior school for nobles. He then asks Kunon what he plans to do about his own education. Kunon is confused, so the Grand Master explains that he should enroll in the official magic school once he turns 12. He notes that all the top royal sorcerers graduate from that academy, which brings together the brightest students from around the world. 2 years pass quickly as Kunon continues his intense training and magical research with Zeonli. Kunon is now 12 years old, and his skills have grown exponentially. During a training session in the snowy courtyard of Kunon's estate, he faces off against Zeonli. Mirika, Dario, and the maid watch from the sidelines. Kunon holds his golden staff and summons several floating water bubbles. Zeonli stands ready with his silver trident staff. Zeonli unleashes a barrage of sharp wooden stakes from glowing yellow magic circles. Kunon remains completely calm and casts a massive 55-section compound spell. He combines his magic to create a blinding white explosion with a jagged blue energy wave that completely neutralizes Zeonli's attack. Zeonli smiles and praises Kunon for successfully pulling off the complex spell. After the battle, everyone heads inside to relax and eat. They use the magic box that Kunon and Zeonli invented to bake a fresh lattice-topped apple pie. Mirika takes a bite and absolutely loves it. The maid notes that the magic tool is incredibly popular and assumes Kunon is making a lot of money from it. Zeonli quickly clarifies that all the profits go straight into his own pocket, not Kunon's. Kunon asks if he can at least get paid for his hard work, but Zeonli argues that the experience of the experiments is payment enough. The maid proudly declares that she will support Kunon financially because she knows his true talent. Kunon jokes with her, asking if she will abandon him once he becomes successful. She promises never to do that. Kunon then monotonously declares his devotion to her and suggests they get married in the future. Mirika just laughs at how fake his proposal sounds, while Zeonli sighs in annoyance at Kunon's constant flirting. Zeonli then changes the subject to their magical research. He notes that they have successfully co-developed 7 different magic tools and published 5 academic papers on new magic theories. They even wrote a comprehensive manual for magic experiments. Kunon mentions that they are currently working on a new item called the insects box. However, Zeonli tells Kunon that he can finish the bug box by himself. He reminds Kunon that he is turning 12 this spring and orders him to get ready to attend the magic school. Kunon immediately refuses. He says he does not want to go because he already has the best master and wants to stay by Zeonli's side to keep learning. Zeonli refuses to play along with Kunon's stubbornness. He explains that as an earth sorcerer, he cannot teach Kunon the true depths of water magic. He tells Kunon that the world is much bigger than their kingdom and suggests that there might be an extraordinary 3-star or even 4-star water sorcerer at the academy who can teach him more. Kunon hesitates, still not wanting to leave. Mirika steps forward and gently takes Kunon's hand. She tells him that he needs to go to the school so he can become an amazing sorcerer. She promises that she will use the time apart to become a fine woman worthy of him and wait for his return. Hearing Mirika's sincere words, Kunon finally agrees to attend the magic school. A few days later, Kunon stands outside his snowy estate, preparing for the long journey. He asks the maid what he needs to pack, wondering if he should bring his favorite pillow. Zeonli and Dario watch from a nearby window. Zeonli yells at Kunon to hurry up and leave. Kunon suddenly freezes in place. He realizes that he completely forgot the main reason he started learning magic in the first place. His ultimate goal has always been to create magical eyeballs so he can see the world. He spent the last 2 years having so much fun developing tools and hanging out with his friends that he grew complacent. He realizes that he learned to do so many things without his sight, that he subconsciously accepted his blindness. He calls himself a fool for forgetting his true ambition and immediately runs back inside his house. He heads straight to his study, determined to figure out the eyeball spell before he leaves for the academy. Meanwhile, Mirka travels back to the royal castle in her carriage with Zionli and Dario. She is completely heartbroken that Kunan is leaving and starts crying uncontrollably. She yells that she hates the situation and cannot handle being apart from him. Zionli calls her a pain and tells her to stop crying since she acted so tough and cool in front of Kunan earlier. Mirka angrily kicks Zionli in the leg. Dario tries to calm the situation down. He explains that Kunan has built a massive track record as a genius sorcerer over the last 2 years. If Kunan manages to create working eyes using magic, he will go down in history as the first person to ever achieve such a miracle. Mirka admits that part of her secretly wishes Kunan would never gain his sight. She fears that if he becomes too perfect and famous, he will leave her behind. She calls herself a despicable woman for having such dark thoughts. Dario gently tells her that everyone has light and darkness in their hearts, but she just has to make sure she chooses the right path. Mirka realizes he is right and decides to trust Kunan. Zionli and Dario then discuss Kunan's magical training. Dario asks Zionli if Kunan actually has the skills needed to create the eyeballs. Zionli proudly lists all the advanced techniques he taught Kunan, including the 55-section compound spell, 3-dimensional magic circles, anchored cylindrical magic circles, imaginary codes, and real logic sand patterns. Dario asks if combining all those theories will actually result in working eyes. Zionli casually admits that he has absolutely no idea. He tells Dario that no one in history has ever created eyeballs from scratch, so he could only give Kunan the theoretical tools to try. Zionli says it is entirely up to Kunan now, but he has total faith that his beloved student will figure it out. Back at the estate, Kunan locks himself in his study and begins experimenting with his magic. He tries his first idea, which he calls the water mirror core. He creates a floating, translucent bubble filled with tiny reflections. He bases this on a lesson from Zionli, who taught him that an insect's eye is essentially a cluster of tens of thousands of tiny mirrors. However, the spell fails. Even though the bubble reflects the entire room, the visual information does not transmit into Kunan's mind. He tries several other variations, creating different types of bubbles and spheres, but none of them work. He ends up passing out on his desk from magical exhaustion. Late at night, Kunan takes a break and visits a wooden sauna room inside the mansion. He sits on the hot benches with his father and mother. His mother drinks a large mug of beer and says it is the best way to refresh. Kunan's father notices that Kunan is stressed and assumes he is stuck on a difficult experiment. Kunan admits that he is trying to create his eyeballs but is nowhere near close to a solution. His father places a supportive hand on Kunan's shoulder and tells him to take a breather whenever he needs to. His mother also promises to support him in any way she can. Kunan realizes how lucky he is to have such wonderful people in his life. He sits in his room and thinks about Mirka, Zionli, Dario the maid, and his parents. He realizes that he desperately wants to see all of their faces. He wants to experience the world exactly the way they do. This deep desire gives him a new perspective on the spell. He realizes that he was overcomplicating the magic by worrying about range, complex configurations, and relaying mechanisms. He decides to think simple. He returns to his study and casts the spell again. He uses the water mirror as the core to capture the light. Then, he applies a real logic sand pattern directly onto the surface of the magical mirror. The pattern is designed to read the moving visual reflections and send that data straight into his mind. He activates the magic, and the bright white sphere slowly condenses into a solid, metallic-looking eyeball. The small orb floats quietly in the air beside him. Kunan opens his eyes. For the first time in his life, visual information floods his brain. He looks around the dusty study, seeing the wooden desks, the bookshelves, and the sunlight streaming through the blue curtain. He is completely overwhelmed with emotion and starts crying tears of joy. He proudly declares that he successfully made eyeballs with magic and that he can finally see. He takes a moment to take in his surroundings. However, when he turns around to look at the rest of the room, his excitement instantly vanishes. He expects to see an empty study, but instead he finds himself standing face to face with a massive, terrifying, pale crab-like monster with countless limbs. The creature is hovering right in front of him in the dark room. Kunan freezes in absolute shock, completely confused and terrified by the horrifying monster that has secretly been inside his house this whole time. He reaches his hand out toward the massive pale crab monster hovering in his study. He expects to feel a hard shell. However, his hand passes right through the creature's body as if it is made of nothing but air. He realizes the monster is completely immaterial and poses no physical threat. He creates a mirror-like portal using his floating green orb to look at his own reflection for the very first time. He examines his short brown hair and his white ruffled shirt. He notes that he does not look particularly dashing and lacks a cool beard. He accepts that this is simply because he is still a child. He wonders if seeing his own face will make him hate himself even more, or if he will eventually come to like the person staring back at him. The experience feels rather anticlimactic, so he turns his attention away from the mirror. Just then, Iko enters the study to check on him. Kunon immediately compliments her traditional maid outfit. He states that the black and white uniform perfectly symbolizes cleanliness. He playfully adds that a true gentleman would simply tell her that the outfit looks incredibly good on her and that she is very cute. Iko gasps in absolute shock and realizes that Kunon is actually commenting on her appearance. She understands that his magical experiment was a success and that he can finally see. Overjoyed, she rushes forward and hugs him tightly. She spins him around until he complains that she is making him dizzy. Iko apologizes but excitedly declares that they must inform his father right away. She also promises to cook a massive feast featuring his favorite creamy crab croquettes to celebrate the occasion. Kunon looks closely at Iko and asks if she has a horn on her head. Iko confidently replies that she only gets a horn when she is extremely angry. Since she is so happy right now, she claims the horn is completely pulled in. Kunon actually sees a long black horn extending from her headband. He decides to keep this information to himself and figures it is best not to mention her sexy horn to avoid making the situation awkward. They leave the study and step outside into the stone-paved courtyard. Kunon is amazed by the sprawling green meadow, the vibrant flowers, and the grand exterior of the mansion. Iko gently places a warm blue cloak around his shoulders to protect him from the chilly air. Kunon stops and asks Iko if she can see the massive crab creature creeping closely behind him. Iko assumes he is just trying to tell her a scary ghost story and eagerly asks to hear the rest of it. Kunon sighs and drops the subject. He confirms his suspicion that the crab is completely invisible to everyone else. He accepts that while his experiment gave him his sight, it also left him seeing bizarre immaterial objects. Later, his mother and brother rush into the room to celebrate his success. His mother tearfully hugs him and expresses how proud she is. Kunon looks at them and is completely taken aback by their appearances. He sees his mother wielding a massive purple sword. He also sees his brother sporting a pair of enormous black feathered wings that make him look like a fallen angel. Kunon excitedly calls them both incredibly badass and compares his mother to a heroic princess from an epic adventure story. His mother blushes deeply from the compliment while his brother nervously accepts the praise. Kunon pulls Iko aside and quietly asks if humans in this world are supposed to have wings. Iko cheerfully explains that everyone is born with the wings of freedom and potential. She notes that these wings allow people to soar through the sky of the mind. However, she adds that people tend to forget how to use these wings as they grow older. Kunon pieces the clues together. He realizes that the crab, the horn, the heroine sword, and the fallen angel wings are all metaphorical manifestations of people's souls or personalities. He also realizes he is the only one capable of seeing them. His father suddenly bursts into the room and is completely ecstatic that Kunon has achieved his dream. Kunon recoils slightly because he sees his father entirely as a dense glowing white fog with only faint traces of facial features. The father ignores Kunon's confusion and announces that they will throw a massive party tonight. He orders Iko to prepare the crab croquettes and demands that word of Kunon's success be sent to the royal castle immediately. The adults happily leave the room to start the preparations. Kunon turns to his brother and asks if a father is typically supposed to resemble a cloud of fog. His brother panics and begs Kunon to never say that out loud. He warns that their father would genuinely cry if he heard it. Kunon agrees to keep it a secret but decides he desperately needs to ask his master Xionli for advice regarding his strange new vision. Meanwhile, at the Grand Magic Tower, Xionli is relaxing in his messy room. A gray-haired messenger arrives and narrowly dodges a sharp white feather that Xionli throws at the doorframe. The messenger informs Xionli that the Grand Master has officially granted him permission to go outside because there is excellent news regarding Kunon's magic. Xionli catches a falling feather and smirks, realizing his student has finally succeeded. Shortly after, Princess Mirika arrives at Kunon's estate in a luxurious carriage. She rushes up the cobblestone path in her red dress to congratulate him. Kunon respectfully bows and shows her the floating green magical orb. He explains that he calls it the glass eye and admits that he worked incredibly hard just so he could finally look at her face. He calls her a gorgeous blonde with ice blue eyes and claims she is even more beautiful than he ever imagined. Mirika blushes and clasps her hands together, completely charmed by his words. However, Kunon struggles to keep a straight face because he sees a massive white quill feather sticking straight out of the black bow on her head. He asks if she is his type, and he quickly recovers by comparing her to the beautiful feather of a majestic bird. Iko chimes in with a strange comment and warns that if Mirika flies too freely, a large middle-aged man with a beard will eventually trap her in a silver birdcage. Dario steps forward and dismisses Iko's weird analogy. He confidently states that Mirika has the skills to take down any middle-aged man in a single hit. He congratulates Kunan on his achievement. Kunan quickly notices the massive white greatsword with a blue gem strapped to Dario's back. Dario proudly pats the weapon and calls it his partner. Suddenly, Zeonli arrives at the estate. Kunan immediately covers his eyes and screams in distress. To Kunan, Zeonli appears as a brilliantly glowing white humanoid figure radiating overwhelmingly intense beams of light. Kunan begs Zeonli to dim himself and complains that the light is literally blinding him. Zeonli smugly agrees and proudly boasts that he is always shining as the brightest human in the world. Unable to handle the visual assault, Kunan requests to speak with Zeonli alone. They move to a private room. Zeonli laughs hysterically with his black-gloved hands covering his face as Kunan frustratedly explains all the bizarre things he sees. Kunan complains that his future plans now involve carrying around a giant crab, marrying a girl with a quill in her head, and dealing with a foggy father. Zeonli finds the entire situation incredibly amusing and loves that Kunan's future sounds so ridiculous. While Mirika practices swinging a wooden sword in the garden to improve her skills, Zeonli gives Kunan two possible explanations for his strange vision. The first theory is that Kunan is actually seeing the physical shapes of people's souls. Kunan realizes this would mean his own soul is literally a giant crab. The second theory is that Kunan is suffering from magic sickness, which is causing intense visual hallucinations. Zeonli explains that some locations naturally accumulate massive amounts of magical power. Exposure to these areas can cause a sorcerer to feel drunk and hallucinate. He recounts a time he visited a dark, misty forest filled with dense mana, and hallucinated a giant white-winged creature sweeping past him. Zeonli admits they do not have enough data to determine which theory is correct. He advises Kunan to keep using his magic eyes to see if he can find a solid pattern. He also sternly warns Kunan to keep this unique ability a secret, noting that people might find him strange or treat him like an outcast if they find out. Kunan agrees with the plan and is relieved to have some guidance. He still complains about Zeonli being too bright to look at. Outside the mansion, Mirika and Iko stand on the brick walkway and discuss what kind of gift Mirika should get Kunan for his upcoming 12th birthday. Iko assures her that Kunan will cherish absolutely anything she gives him. Zeonli and Kunan emerge from the building, and Zeonli jokingly mentions the quill sticking out of Mirika's head. Kunan quickly covers for his master and claims they were just having a private conversation about his magic. Sometime later, Iko helps Kunan pack his belongings in his spacious study. She gathers a massive stack of thick books and promises to leave them in the main library so he will not have to carry them all. On the night of his 12th birthday, Kunan's family and the estate staff throw a lavish celebration in the grand dining room. Everyone raises their glasses to toast his special day. His father gives him a sturdy decorative golden staff that will last him a long time. His mother presents him with a high-quality golden quill pen and 2 spare nibs. She urges him to study hard at the academy. His brother hands him a custom brown notebook filled with food illustrations. He explains that it is a map of all the best restaurants located along the route to the magic school. He wants Kunan to have something fun to look forward to during the long journey. The mother suddenly bursts into tears and weeps into her white handkerchief at the thought of Kunan moving so far away. The brother and father quickly rush to comfort her. They assure her that Kunan will graduate quickly and will always love her no matter the distance. Kunan promises to stay in touch, and the father successfully lifts everyone's spirits by declaring that tonight is for celebrating. Later that night, Kunan and Mirika stand together on the mansion's balcony under the starry sky. Mirika presents him with a rectangular gift box lined with red velvet. Kunan opens it to find a beautiful beaded bracelet inside. Mirika reveals that she is wearing the exact same bracelet, making them a matching pair. Kunan is deeply touched and claims the matching bracelet outshines any royal crown in existence. Mirika tells him to speak to the bracelet whenever his classes at the magic school get too difficult. She promises that she will do the same whenever she misses him. Kunan vows to return to her side no matter what happened. They firmly clasp their hands together and solidify their bond before his departure. The following morning, the entire household gathers on the lush green lawn to see Kunan off. The mother cries into her handkerchief once again as the father notes how anxious Kunan must be feeling about leaving home for the first time. However, Kunan casually climbs into his carriage and delivers a quick, unemotional goodbye to everyone. His brother laughs out loud and notes that the completely unbothered farewell is incredibly fitting for Kunan's personality. As the carriage rolls away, Kunan uses a black blindfold to rest his eyes. He chats with Iko about all the different types of sorcerers he hopes to meet at the academy. Suddenly, a young man wearing a green coat sprints across the field toward the moving carriage. He shouts for them to wait and pulls a bouquet of yellow flowers from his brown bag. He successfully catches up and hops onto the carriage to join Kunan on the journey. Meanwhile, inside a massive stone cathedral, a woman with light purple hair and a white hooded robe finishes her prayers at the altar. A maid approaches the woman, who is known as Saint Reyes, and respectfully informs her that it is time to depart for the magic school. The saint calmly acknowledges the order and prepares to begin her own journey to the academy. Kunan and his maid Iko continue their journey in a comfortable horse-drawn carriage. Iko mentions that it has already been 5 days since they left the manor and they are still traveling through the kingdom of Hulia. She estimates that it will take them about a month to finally reach the city of Dirashik, where the magic school is located. Kunan remarks that the journey is incredibly long, but notes that they should be arriving at his grandfather's estate very soon. Iko reminds Kunan that this estate is where they will officially part ways. She explains that she is getting past the ideal marriageable age and needs to focus on settling down and starting a family. She believes that if she gives up on marriage now, she will never get another chance for the rest of her life. Kunan jokes about his inability to live without her and playfully asks if she wants him to leave Princess Marika so he can marry her instead. Iko laughs off the joke as the carriage approaches a massive white mansion surrounded by lush green fields. They step out of the carriage, and Kunan reminisces about his last visit 4 years ago. He recalls dragging his entire family to this estate just because he heard it contained a massive library filled with rare magic books. He even remembers throwing a massive tantrum and dancing around the room until his parents finally agreed to take him. Iko warmly remembers his intense dedication to learning magic from such a young age. Kunan's grandfather, a demon lord with large black horns and a gray beard, rushes out of the mansion and embraces Kunan with a massive hug. He laughs joyfully and notes how much Kunan has grown since their last meeting. He asks about Kunan's mother, Tinalisa, and Kunan confirms that she is doing incredibly well. The grandfather is so thrilled about Kunan enrolling in the magic school that he immediately offers to buy him absolutely anything he wants to celebrate the occasion. He suggests buying him rare gems and jewels and shouts for a jeweler to be brought to the estate. However, a maid interrupts the celebration and hands the grandfather a letter from Tinalisa. The grandfather reads the letter and completely loses his mind. He complains that Tinalisa explicitly ordered him not to spend more than 500,000 neka on Kunan. He argues that this amount is not a child's allowance and is barely equivalent to 2 months of his own salary. He tries to convince Kunan to let him buy a large vessel in secret so Tinalisa will never find out. Kunan declines the offer and instead asks his grandfather to send for his new maid so she can take over Iko's duties. The grandfather agrees and calls for the new servant. A young woman with a black horn on her forehead introduces herself as Rinko Round. She loudly announces that she is 18 years old and applied for the job simply because the pay is good. She explains that she wants to open her own store in the future and needs to save up money for her upcoming wedding expenses. Kunan greets her and confirms that she is Iko's younger sister. Rinko proudly mentions that she already has a fiancé, unlike her older sister. Kunan clarifies that he has absolutely no intention of taking her as a mistress because he already has a fiancé of his own. He advises Rinko to cherish her fiancé more than her daily meals. Rinko agrees to do her best and reiterates her dream of opening a store with her future husband. Kunan laughs and tells Rinko that she shares the exact same lively sense of humor as Iko. Rinko bows respectfully and expresses her excitement to serve him. Later, the two sisters work together in the kitchen to prepare some food. Rinko mentions that she was initially nervous about serving the scion of a marquis who possesses a famous hero scar, but she is relieved to find that Kunan is actually very easygoing. Iko explains that Kunan often forgets to eat when he is intensely focused on his magic studies. She instructs Rinko to make his favorite hamburg steak and bacon sandwiches so he can easily eat while reading. Rinko jokes about Kunan becoming a massive womanizer in the future because he is always so kind and complimentary toward women. Iko completely loses her mind at the suggestion and screams that Kunan is a sweet angel who would never do such a thing. She fiercely insists that Princess Marika is the only woman in the world allowed to touch him romantically. Rinko tries to calm her down and promises to keep a close eye on Kunan's relationships with other women. Eventually, the time comes for Kunan to depart for the Magic Academy. Iko helps him pack his large travel trunks and informs him that it is time to leave. Kunan thanks Iko for everything and reminds her of his previous statement about never being fine if she ever left him. He acknowledges that he is now separated from his parents, his brother, his master, and Princess Marika, and he must now leave Iko behind as well. However, he accepts that this is the path he chose for himself. Iko assures him that they are only separated by distance and promises to continue working in Hulia after she gets married. She mentions that she might even have an adorable child of her own by the time Kunon returns for a visit. They share a tender hug in his bedroom before heading outside to the carriage. The grandfather begs Kunon to stay and live at the estate with him, but Kunon completely ignores the pleas and tells the driver to start the carriage. The carriage rolls away as the grandfather desperately shouts for Kunon to wait. Inside the carriage, Rinko asks if it was really okay to ignore the grandfather's final words. Kunon explains that responding would have only delayed their departure further. He thanks Rinko for agreeing to work for him and asks if her fiancé is truly okay with waiting several years for her to return. Rinko confidently replies that her fiancé is perfectly fine with the arrangement because the job will provide the funds they need for their future restaurant. She explains that running a restaurant is essentially the same as her current job because it involves sustaining people with food. Kunon agrees and expresses his excitement about starting a completely new life and meeting new people at the academy. After a long journey, they finally arrive in the bustling city of Dirashik. Rinko is completely mesmerized by the sheer number of magic stores lining the cobblestone streets. She assumes Dirashik must be a nation filled with incredible magic. They decide to enter a local magic bookstore to browse the selection. Rinko is amazed by the massive collection of spellbooks, but she immediately screams in horror when she sees the price tag on an ornate red book. She complains that the book costs 5 million NECA, which is more than enough to buy her dream restaurant and a second branch location. A young woman with glasses and a blue hat hears the commotion and approaches them. She explains that magic books are completely one of a kind, which justifies the exorbitant prices. She introduces herself as a magic enthusiast who desperately wants to work in the magical field. She asks if Kunon is a sorcerer applying to the magic school and begs him to show her a spell. Kunon agrees and uses his golden staff to cast a water spell called Aori. He instantly summons a tiny, glowing water kitten. The woman is absolutely thrilled by the adorable spell and thanks him profusely. She mentions that the academy is going to be incredibly intense this year because famous figures like Saint Reyes of the Holy Kingdom are enrolling. She also notes that the Inferno Prince and the Lightning Bolt enrolled the previous year. She predicts that Kunon will become incredibly famous alongside them. She then offers Kunon a special discount on a second-hand grimoire written by the popular sorcerer Zeonli Finroll. Kunon politely declines the offer and explains that he already knows the contents of the book because he is the one who wrote the clean copy for his master. Rinko clutches her head and screams in total shock at the revelation. They leave the bookstore and walk down the street to find another shop. They enter a clothing store filled with various animal furs and garments. Rinko completely ignores the mustache storekeeper and aggressively rubs her face against the luxurious dark fox fur. The storekeeper panics and yells at her to stop touching his expensive merchandise. Rinko explains that she is simply trying to memorize the texture of the fur so Kunon can reproduce it with his magic. The storekeeper is confused, so Kunon immediately casts his water spell and creates a perfect, fluffy water clone of the dark fox. The storekeeper is completely stunned that Kunon can replicate animals using only their shape and texture. He creepily asks if Kunon can use the same magic to reproduce a woman for him. Rinko is absolutely disgusted by the inappropriate question. She quickly covers Kunon's ears to protect his innocence and screams at the storekeeper for tainting a child's mind. She drags Kunon out of the store and declares that the entire town is terrible for his education. The storekeeper is left alone in his shop, sweating profusely and regretting his impulsive comments. Suddenly, Saint Reyes and two other individuals in white and gold cloaks enter the store. They politely ask to see the rare dark fox scarf. The storekeeper points to the water clone and explains that it is actually a magical reproduction. The water fox suddenly bursts into a massive puddle of water right over the storekeeper's crotch. The storekeeper stands frozen in embarrassment as the water drips down his pants. Saint Reyes observes the puddle and solemnly notes that the water spell is completely outside of her extensive magical knowledge. Meanwhile, Kunon and Rinko finally reach the grand entrance of the Magic Academy. They approach the reception desk, but a purple-haired student named Lubella firmly informs them that there are absolutely no vacancies left in the school dormitories. She explains that the application deadline passed a long time ago and assumes Kunon was already aware of this. Kunon realizes his master completely forgot to mention the deadline to him. Back at Zeonli's Grand Magic Tower, a black-clad warrior with red eyes and spiked armor crashes straight through the glass window and lands in Zeonli's study. Zeonli is completely unfazed by the dramatic entrance and asks if the warrior is here to play. The warrior ignores the sarcasm and states that he needs to speak urgently about his beloved student. Zeonli sighs heavily and admits that the situation is bad. Back at the academy courtyard, Kunon decides to rent a house for the duration of his studies instead of wasting money on a hotel. He suggests that he and Rinko rent a small house and live together. Rinko gets overly excited and hilariously assumes Kunon is proposing to her. Lubella interrupts the misunderstanding and hands them a brochure listing real estate agents who specifically cater to sorcerers. Kunon and Rinko use the brochure to find a massive 2-story brick house surrounded by a metal fence. They finalize the rental agreement and officially start their new life together. Later, Kunon attempts to enter the main academy building for the entrance exam check-in. Lubella stops him at the door and firmly states that absolutely no one is allowed inside except for authorized staff and current students. Rinko tries to bribe her with a gold coin, but Lubella immediately rejects the offer. As they turn to leave, Kunon casually compliments Lubella's name, stating that the combination of sounds is exceptionally beautiful. Lubella blushes deeply and is completely charmed by his smooth words. She watches him walk away down the stone corridor while golden sparkles seem to float around him. Elsewhere on the academy grounds, a white-haired girl instructs 2 boys to wait outside a testing building. Inside, the academy examiners review the portraits of the incoming students. They analyze the files of Saint Reyes and a few other notable applicants, but their attention is immediately drawn to the file of the boy with the eye patch and the cane. Kunon stands outside the academy with a massive smile on his face, eagerly anticipating the challenges of the advanced class. Kunon spots a girl with a white veil and star-shaped accessories standing outside the academy and immediately approaches her. He asks if she is the saint of the Holy Kingdom, and when she confirms it, Kunon gets incredibly excited. He tells her that he has never met anyone with a light attribute before and quickly starts hitting on her, begging to discuss her magic over some sweets. The saint bluntly rejects his advances and tells him she has no interest if he is just trying to flirt. Undeterred, Kunon continues to beg her for a date. Nearby, 2 other students, a freckled boy named Hank Beat and a young man with a cross earring named Raya Huffs, watch the exchange and comment on Kunon's bold and strange personality. The saint, whose name is Reyes, ignores Kunon's flirting and questions whether someone with inferior magic can even learn from superior light magic, as light stands higher than all other attributes. Kunon confidently replies that there is no clear hierarchy when it comes to magic. Reyes then warns him that she lacks normal human emotions compared to other people, so she might speak normally but still end up offending him. She reveals that she carries the curse of the Demon Lord, making her a hero's scar. Hearing this, Kunon is completely thrilled. He reveals that he is also a hero's scar and declares that their meeting today must be absolute fate. He begs her to tell him more about herself, but before he can continue his relentless flirting, a professor named Soft Cricket and his assistant Safai arrive to interrupt them. Soft warmly congratulates the 4 applicants on their enrollment. The students are a bit confused because they haven't even taken the entrance exam yet, but Safai clarifies the situation. She explains that anyone born with a sorcerer's crest is incredibly rare, so they are basically guaranteed entry into the school without much effort. However, since all 4 of them brought special letters of recommendation from their countries or magic masters, they are applying specifically for the advanced class. Safai details the school structure, explaining that the first level teaches basic magic and the second level is like a standard classroom environment. The third level, also known as independent research, is the advanced class where top-tier sorcerers can study whatever they want, invent new magic tools, or write grimoires without being confined to a classroom. Kunon is absolutely thrilled at the prospect of researching whatever he wants and getting to do his own thing. Soft then announces that the practical skill test for the advanced class is about to begin right there in the courtyard. He instructs each student to step forward, state their crest attribute, its rank, and the number of spells they can use, followed by a demonstration of their absolute best spell. Hank goes first, proudly stating that he has a 2-star fire crest and can use 7 different spells. He raises his hand and casts Ka-Ru, an elementary spell that summons a massive, glowing orange eagle made entirely of fire. The fire eagle streaks across the courtyard with incredible speed. Soft praises Hank's excellent control, explaining that the magical power determining the route of the flame is much more important than the flame itself. Next up is Rhea, who steps forward and announces that he has a 2-star wind crest and knows 8 spells. Soft is highly impressed that someone his age knows so many spells and mentions that he also has a wind crest, which makes him want to root for Rhea. Rhea nervously asks the professors to step back before he raises his wand into the air and casts Fuguru. The intermediate spell draws magical power from the sky, collecting the air and turning it into a massive, swirling white vortex of wind that erupts from the ground. Soft notes the sheer power of the spell, pointing out that intermediate magic uses a significantly larger amount of magical energy compared to elementary magic. Reyes is up next, and she calmly states that she has a 3-star light crest and knows 5 spells. Since her best spell is healing magic and no one is currently injured, she decides to demonstrate a different ability. She raises her silver staff and casts Ra Sera, summoning an enormous, blinding pillar of blue magical energy that instantly erupts into the sky. Kunan is completely amazed by the sheer speed of her magic, realizing that it is impossible to evade unless an opponent reacts before the spell is even cast. Finally, it is Kunan's turn to take the test. He steps forward with his golden staff and introduces himself, stating that he has a 2-star water crest but only knows 2 elementary spells, Aori and Rubu. The other students are shocked that he only knows 2 basic spells, but Seifai reveals that they received special instructions regarding his exam. She pulls out 2 letters of recommendation, one from the Grand Master of the Royal Sorcerers and another from Kunan's personal master, Zeonli Finral. Seifai explains that Zeonli explicitly requested the school to make Kunan's exam extra hard to test his true capabilities. It becomes incredibly clear that Seifai harbors a deep grudge against Zeonli and absolutely despises Kunan's arrogant, flirty attitude. She is more than happy to give him an impossibly difficult task just to send him packing. Kunan simply laughs off the hostility and turns to Reyes, asking her to watch his performance and promising to take her out on a date afterward. Seifai furiously yells at him to stop flirting and focus on the exam. Soph steps up to personally test Kunan, raising his own wand to cast Fu Ruguru. A massive, swirling barrier of dense white wind completely envelops the professor. The other students watch in awe, realizing that the intermediate spell creates an impenetrable whirlpool of magical power. They know that any basic water spell will easily be repelled or shredded to pieces by the fierce wind, making the assignment incredibly unfair for someone who only knows 2 elementary spells. Seifai smirks, confident that Kunan will fail. However, Kunan just stands there calmly and acts disappointed, claiming he expected something much more challenging. He casually casts Aori to summon a single, iridescent water bubble. He then repeatedly commands the bubble to multiply until thousands of large bubbles fill the entire courtyard and float into the sky. With a quick strike of his staff against the ground, Kunan uses a color-changing spell to turn all the bubbles bright red. The bubbles burst and merge, creating a thick, fleshy red mist that completely surrounds Soph's wind barrier, trapping the professor inside. Soph assumes Kunan is just trying to blind him or stall for time. But Kunan casually sits down on a translucent red chair made of water and reveals his true strategy. He explains that because he is only using elementary magic, the spell requires very little magical energy to maintain. He confidently states that he can sustain the red mist for at least 2 days straight without breaking a sweat. On the other hand, Soph's intermediate wind barrier consumes a massive amount of mana, meaning the professor will completely run out of energy in less than half a day. If Soph tries to lower the power of his wind to save his mana, the dense red mist will instantly crush him. Kunan has effectively turned the combat exam into a test of pure endurance, leaving Soph with absolutely no way to win the battle. Realizing he has been completely outsmarted and cornered by basic magic, Soph happily concedes defeat and praises Kunan's ingenuity. Kunan cheers in victory, thrilled that his plan worked so flawlessly. Seifai is completely shocked by the outcome and frantically takes notes on Kunan's terrifying potential, noting that the red mist looks like a gruesome sea of blood covering the courtyard. The other students are utterly amazed by how easily Kunan defeated a professor using only basic spells. As soon as the barrier drops, Kunan immediately runs back over to Reyes and begs her to teach him how to shoot water as fast as her light beams so they can combine their magic together. Seifai quickly interrupts them and yells at Kunan to stop bothering the saint, announcing that it is time for the individual interviews inside the building. The students head into a classroom where Soph calls Hank to follow him for the first interview, leaving the others to wait. Kunan complains out loud that he would much rather be interviewed alone by a beautiful lady, and Seifai coldly agrees that she feels the exact same way about him. While waiting, Kunan continues to grab Reyes by the arms and relentlessly asks her for a date, insisting that they need to discuss light magic. Seifai completely shuts him down again and orders him to behave. Eventually, it is Kunan's turn, and he enters a wood-paneled room to speak with Soph. The professor asks Kunan about his strategy during the practical exam, guessing that if there had been a time limit, Kunan would have tried to fuse his water with the wind to take control of it from the inside. Kunan confirms this theory, holding up a small bubble of water to demonstrate. He explains that water can penetrate almost any material, making it the absolute best attribute for eroding another person's magic and taking control of it from the inside out. However, he humbly admits that he hasn't beaten his master yet, so he can't officially claim that water is the strongest attribute in the world. He states that his main goal at the academy is to study hard, learn many new things, and eventually surpass Zeonli completely. After the chat concludes, Seifai escorts Kunan out of the room and leads him down a grand, sunlit hallway to a different part of the building for the final stage of his evaluation. She stops in front of a dark, ominous doorway and explains that the room beyond it is basically an eternal night. She warns him that nobody knows for sure if there is even solid ground inside, but assures him that he won't fall. Despite the ominous warning, Kunan confidently steps through the doorway and the door shuts behind him, leaving him in total darkness. Inside, Kunan finds himself in a pitch-black void filled with floating spiky orbs and a starry sky. His magical senses and his glass eye are completely blocked, but he can feel dirt under his feet and smell grass in the air. Suddenly, 7 massive, hooded figures with glowing white outlines appear around him. One of the figures speaks with a deep, echoing voice, introducing herself as Grey Ruva. She reveals that she is actually Zeonli's former master, and that she wanted to test Kunan personally because Zeonli praised his potential so highly. Instead of being intimidated by the terrifying magical presence, Kunan immediately tells her not to get too close because he already has a fiancé and shouldn't be alone with other women. Grey points out that she just watched him relentlessly flirt with the saint outside, but Kunan smoothly claims he only wanted to discuss magic with Reyes in private. Grey then reveals that she is actually an old hag who is much older than him, expecting that detail to deter his advances. However, Kunan doubles down and insists that a true gentleman never changes how he treats a woman based on her age. He praises her as a mature lady who knows both the bitter and the sweet sides of life, and he openly flirts with her, completely ignoring the terrifying atmosphere of the void. Grey is completely baffled by his energetic and fearless personality. She decides she has seen enough and officially accepts him into the advanced class, telling him to study hard and build his track record. Kunan thanks her cheerfully and safely exits the dark room. Meanwhile, far away in his own towering magic estate, Zeonli speaks with an armored warrior and expresses how incredibly proud he is of Kunan. He notes that Kunan is a 1-in-a-million prodigy who will easily surpass him in just a few years. Zeonli hopes the academy will give Kunan the freedom to grow into a massive troublemaker because his potential is completely unmatched. Later that evening, Kunan finally returns to his rented house in the city. His maid, Rinko, is waiting for him in the stone courtyard and excitedly asks how his first day at school went. Kunan smiles and tells her it was a lot of fun, but quickly adds that he missed her the entire time he was away. Rinko immediately sees through his smooth talk and loudly accuses him of using the school day as an excuse to go on a date and hit on girls. Kunan plays innocent and smoothly claims that he only has eyes for her, but Rinko completely refuses to believe him, knowing his womanizing habits all too well. While Kunan and Rinko bicker playfully in the courtyard, Grey Ruva reflects on Kunan's performance in the dark void. She realizes that while he was blindly flirting with her, he was secretly attempting to use a completely unknown, unfinished spell to see through the magical darkness of the room. She chuckles to herself, acknowledging that his relentless curiosity and terrifying potential will undoubtedly make him the legendary Cerulean sorcerer one day. Back at Kunan's family estate, his parents receive a letter from his maid Rinko detailing his recent entrance exam. His mother reads the letter aloud, happily noting that Kunan passed with flying colors and secured a spot in the advanced class at the magic school. She thinks it is wonderful news until she reads the next lines. Rinko mentions that Kunan slightly overdid the exam and ended up painting the entire schoolyard red, earning him the nickname of the troublemaker behind the Sea of Blood incident. However, Rinko quickly adds that it is all just the fruit of his incredible talent, and everything is perfectly fine. Kunan's parents do not share her optimistic outlook. His father collapses on the floor in absolute shock and devastation. The realization that his son caused a massive problem right after enrolling infuriates him. He clutches the crumpled letter tightly in his fist and screams in frustration, declaring that such behavior is completely unacceptable. To teach Kunan a lesson, his father decides to cut off his allowance entirely, refusing to send him any money for a whole month. His wife tries to tell him that the punishment is too cruel, but his mind is already made up. Meanwhile, at the magic school, Rinko finds out about the cut allowance and simply laughs it off. She thinks it perfectly matches the school's intense style and actually likes the idea, though Kunan does not find it funny at all. The situation gets even more complicated when Professor Sof and his assistant Seifai stand before the advanced class to drop a major bombshell. They announce that all advanced students are completely responsible for making their own living. Reyes immediately stands up to protest, stating that she came to the academy solely to learn magic and has absolutely no time to figure out how to make ends meet. Soph calmly explains that the advanced class is designed to foster top-tier sorcerers, and one of the strict conditions for reaching that level is the ability to generate income. He breaks it down simply, telling the students that if they cannot make money on their own using their skills, they will never become top-tier magic users. Reyes is completely stressed out by this revelation. She complains to her classmates that her monthly living expenses amount to a staggering 1.5 million NECA. Since she is a noble lady, she needs a large amount of money just to invest in herself. On top of that, she has 2 maids who also serve as her personal guards, meaning she has to pay their regular salaries as well. She has absolutely no idea how she is going to secure that kind of funding. To make matters worse, Seyfi leads the students to their newly assigned private research labs. While the use of the actual room is completely free, Seyfi clarifies that the students are fully responsible for buying their own medicine, books, and materials for any research they conduct. She also warns them that they are free to slack off if they choose, but failing to earn enough credits through successful experiments and magical achievements will result in their immediate demotion to the 2nd level. Kunan is unfazed by the pressure and confidently states that he can easily manage. Rinko backs him up, proudly mentioning that she and Kunan have already made quite a bit of money alongside his master Zionli. Seyfi clicks her tongue in annoyance at the mention of Zionli. Rinko points out that Kunan's master even secured a lifelong job as a magical engineer at the school, proving that working in the magic field is highly lucrative. Kunan uses the opportunity to flirt with Reyes again, asking her what kind of job she plans to take on with her light magic. He offers to discuss it over some sweets at a famous magic parfait shop, but Reyes immediately shoots him down with a blunt rejection. Later that day, Kunan relaxes on the grass outside his rented house while a glowing magical book hovers in front of him. Rinko approaches and tells him that dinner is ready. She notices him sighing and asks if something happened at school. Kunan complains that the saint constantly turns him down no matter how hard he tries. Rinko sharply scolds him, telling him that his pushy behavior will not work. She lectures him on how to be a proper gentleman, explaining that he must always respect a lady's wishes above everything else. She also warns him never to be alone with a girl, as it causes unnecessary misunderstandings. Kunan agrees to be more careful in the future. Rinko then shifts the topic to his financial situation, asking if he will actually be able to make money since his father cut off his allowance. Kunan confidently assures her that he will have no problem paying her salary, which makes Rinko incredibly happy. Meanwhile, Reyes sits in her dimly lit dorm room with her 2 maids, having a serious discussion about their severe lack of funds. One of her maids confirms that the school absolutely forbids Reyes from receiving any financial support or donations from the Holy Kingdom. The rules strictly state that advanced students cannot accept money or goods from outside parties. Her maids kindly offer to work without pay to help her out, but then quickly admit they are just joking. Reyes' main problem is that her unique healing magic is a holy power bestowed by her god and ancestors, meaning she is strictly forbidden from using it for business purposes. She is completely stuck with no capital and no way to monetize her skills. The next day, Reyes walks through the busy academy halls, still stressing over how she is going to earn 1.5 million NECA. She suddenly notices a massive crowd of exhausted students lined up in front of a wooden door. A male student asks Rinko for a 60-minute course, explaining that he pulled an all-nighter for an experiment and desperately needs deep sleep. Rinko cheerfully guarantees him a well-rested time and leads him into the room. When another group of students tries to enter, Rinko politely tells them all the slots are full and they will have to wait 30 minutes. Reyes watches in absolute shock as she realizes Kunan has started a massively successful business right inside the school. Kunan walks up and proudly introduces his new venture as a sleep sanctuary. Inside the room, several students are suspended in the air within translucent bubbles, sleeping peacefully on waterbeds that Kunan created using his water magic. He explains that these magical beds provide incredibly comfortable and deep rest, noting that it is the only creation his master Zionli ever actually complimented. Seyfi is visibly annoyed by Kunan's success but admits that sleep is a brilliant business model for an academy full of overworked magic researchers. Kunan originally got the idea because he and Rinko frequently pull all-nighters for their own experiments, and he figured other students would gladly pay for a quick, high-quality nap. His business becomes such an instant hit that Seyfi even grants him an additional lab space just to accommodate the high demand from the school's professors. Students and teachers alike rave about the sleep sanctuary, claiming that a 60-minute nap on Kunan's waterbeds makes them feel like they slept for half a day, completely wiping out the fatigue from multiple sleepless nights. The money starts rolling in, and Kunan quickly amasses a massive pile of silver coins. Back in her room, Reyes's maid suggests that she swallow her pride and ask Kunan for business advice. Reyes is completely humiliated by the idea of relying on someone so frivolous, especially after he spent the entire week hitting on her. However, with her classmates also suggesting he is the best person to help, she realizes she has no other choice. Reyes approaches Kunan in his lab and states her situation, making it clear that she does not want to owe him anything in return. Kunan acts like a perfect gentleman and assures her he will not prey on her vulnerability. Remembering Rinko's strict lecture about not being alone with a girl, Kunan actually calls Professor Seifai into the room to act as a proper chaperone before the meeting begins. Seifai is genuinely surprised by his mature decision. Reyes explains her dilemma, reiterating that she cannot use her holy healing magic for profit and has zero starting capital. Seifai suggests she could verify spells or write archival reports for other researchers, but Reyes points out that as new students, their data would not sell for much. Kunan then asks if Reyes can use her purification magic to create products. When she confirms she can, Kunan proposes they team up to create and sell magic tools together. Seifai immediately jumps in to warn Reyes about the complications of sharing product rights, but Kunan smoothly waives his share. He states that since Reyes is the one in desperate need of money right now, she can take the lead and keep the profits, completely avoiding any future disputes. Reyes is hesitant but agrees to the partnership. Kunan gets incredibly excited to finally do some light magic experiments. The group heads to the lab of Professor Shreya Golin, a blonde woman who specializes in the light attribute. Shreya is already a huge fan of Kunan because she regularly uses his sleep sanctuary, praising the waterbeds for clearing her fatigue and making her skin look amazing. Kunan presents a small brown box containing 5 seeds of the sacred herb Shishila. Reyes immediately tells him that growing the herb is impossible because Shishila can only survive in Holy Land. Kunan smiles and explains his brilliant theory. Since Holy Land is simply a place heavily imbued with purification power, he wonders if they can artificially recreate those exact conditions using Reyes's personal light spell, Sanctum. He believes the holy barrier created by Sanctum will perfectly mimic the environment of a holy land and allow the seeds to grow. Reyes is stunned by the idea but decides to try. She stands over the 5 pots of soil, closes her eyes and casts Sanctum. A radiant golden light and shimmering sparkles completely envelop the area. Within seconds, small green sprouts magically emerge from the soil. Kunan and Shreya erupt into cheers of pure excitement. Kunan frantically starts writing down notes, entirely consumed by his passion for magic. Watching him obsess over the barrier and the growth process, Reyes realizes that Kunan actually genuinely cares about magical research. She figures he only teamed up with her to conduct this specific experiment, meaning his earlier flirting might have just been an excuse to get close to her light magic. Kunan casually asks her to go out for lunch to celebrate. Reyes accepts the invitation but points out that the small sprouts hardly seem worth the massive 1.5 million NECA she needs. Shreya then reveals that the seeds themselves cost Kunan a staggering 1 million NECA. He spent all his earnings from the sleep sanctuary just to buy the materials for this test. Kunan admits that if the experiment had failed, he would have been completely broke, but he was willing to take the massive risk just to see if the theory worked. Reyes is deeply moved by his dedication and feels genuinely sorry for causing him so much trouble. Kunan tells her he would much rather hear her say thank you instead of apologizing. Reyes smiles and sincerely thanks him. The group waits patiently as the sprouts rapidly grow into beautiful white lilies under the bright sunlight streaming into the room. Once the flowers fully bloom, Kunan, Reyes, and Shreya begin processing them. They carefully grind the white and yellow petals in a mortar, mix in dried grass, and extract the powerful liquids into a bowl of water to create small, concentrated green spheres. They take the finished pills to a local guild shop for evaluation. The pink-haired clerk inspects the green spheres through a magnifying glass and is completely blown away. He confirms that they are genuine Shishila pills of incredibly high purity. Because of their flawless quality, he prices the batch at a massive 2 million NECA, instantly solving Reyes's financial crisis in a single afternoon. To celebrate closing such a lucrative deal, Kunan takes Reyes and her 2 maids out to a fancy restaurant. He tells the ladies to order whatever they want, acting like the ultimate generous gentleman. The table is quickly filled with massive plates of meat, croquettes, french fries, and expensive drinks. The maids enthusiastically thank Kunan for his help and for negotiating a long-term contract with the guild on their behalf. Everyone raises their glasses for a joyful toast. However, later that afternoon, Kunan walks down the academy hallway looking completely miserable. He complains to himself that the lunch ended up costing a ridiculous 220,000 NECA. He realizes the massive bill is entirely because Reyes's maids drank several bottles of incredibly rare vintage wine like it was regular water. He sighs and admits he learned a very harsh lesson about offering a blank check to women. While Kunan mopes in the hallway, his classmates Hank and Ria approach him. They saw how easily he solved Reyes's problem and ask if he can give them some business advice as well. Kunon immediately complains that he only goes out of his way to help beautiful ladies, but he eventually gives in and asks what their ideas are. Hank excitedly says he wants to create bacon that he can actually eat, and Ria declares that he wants to find a way to fly. Kunan laughs at their ridiculous goals, but agrees to help them figure it out. Meanwhile, back at the sleep sanctuary, 3 girls slowly wake up from their naps on the waterbeds. One has dark hair and red eyes, another has light blue hair and fuzzy earmuffs, and the third is a blonde girl with twin tails. Instead of leaving, they sit together on the floor and discuss their true intentions. They realize that none of them are actually there just to sleep. They are all secretly gathering information on Kunan's abilities and are actively plotting to get him for themselves.